Thanks. Welcome, everyone, to the Architectural Board of Review for August 14th. And we'll start with a mic check, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Gradine.
Here.
Vice Chair Tripp. Here. What? It's so loud. Board Member Watkins.
Here.
And Board Member Witosh.
Is that your mic that's doing that?
Yep.
Yes, sounds like it.
Yep.
Sounds like it.
Check, check.
Sounds
You
better.
fixed it. Good job. All right. So we'll.
I checked too. I didn't say it, but I check also.
Oh. All right. So our first item is public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to comment on an item not on today's agenda, is welcome to step forward. And we have a couple of speaker slips submitted already. One from John Campanella, Planning Commissioner. Hello, John.
Hi. Thank you, Chair Gradine and Commissioners. What I would just like to comment on for a couple of minutes are when projects come to Planning Commission for our review and comment back to you. I just want to open a channel of feedback that what occurs is that you would get a staff report, which would be inclusive of what we discussed in our opinions. So anything that could be clearer to you, I know staff is doing their best and it's an in-process project, but we would appreciate your feedback if we're hitting the items that you want to know about, so that when we have our discussions, and also we can make sure it makes it into our minutes, that it would be much more beneficial to you. We don't see the staff report that comes to you. That's done after the fact. So our job is to make sure we hit all the high points, get it in our minutes, and then staff puts it together for you. So we would appreciate any feedback you could give us. And it's also beneficial when you have a member at the meeting. Kevin was at our last meeting, and we had a little discussion on some items he would like to hear, and one was compatibility, for example, that it would be good to hear back from us on our feeling on that. So just want to make sure we keep on communicating and appreciate your feedback on an ongoing basis. And then secondly...
Before you finish with that, John, it just occurred to me that it seems like it would be a good practice, because you've repeatedly come to me and asked me about trying to keep the lines of communication open, more open between ABR and PC. And it just occurred to me just now for the first time that what we could do after we've reviewed it, and often it goes through 2 or 3 reviews before it goes to you, that we could make a list of particular issues that we would like the Planning Commission to comment on. So if there's traffic issues or compatibility issues, height, mass, bulk, and scale, et cetera, we could list those as specific things that we would like comments on.
Oh, that would be great, because you'd be having your discussions. You'd also be receiving maybe public comment that we wouldn't hear. So you can incorporate that into the things you'd like to hear from us.
Yeah. Matthew has a comment.
I just wanted to build off that and say that staff is currently working on reformulating the ways for large projects you create your motions, using the compatibility analysis criteria that is already existing in Title 22, which for the ABR. It is, to Mr. Campanella's point, an attempt to create clearer communication between the boards. And because and we'll talk more about that at our next meeting. We're set to have that conversation, and that's going to be part of that conversation. But I just wanted to let you know that we're trying to address the communication issue. And part of yes, that's all I'm going to say right now.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you. One more item. At our last meeting, just so there was, we just wanted to clarify the condition of stack parking. And we had made some comments on one of your projects that had differences of opinion, but we did make a motion that was approved to let the design boards know that the Planning Commission does support the use of stacked parking with mixed-use, higher-density housing projects as a way to provide additional parking on the site. And, you know, we wanted to pass this along because somebody may have gotten the impression that we were not in favor of it. So just want to let you know that. But again, it's up to the design boards to look at the entire project. But we're not predisposed to say, no, we don't like it. Okay, we want to get that point across. Okay? Thank you
Very
for your
good.
time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Is it Lanny or Larry Mazer?
Yeah.
Could you come forward, please? Well, we need to have you on the microphone, otherwise folks at home and the camera can't pick you up. So, yeah, that's right. It's a public meeting. It's been the practice for years.
What's that?
It's been the practice for years. Yeah.
And because,
Just to keep the public informed. There's a lot of people who are interested in these issues but can't.
and how do they
They can watch on they can watch on their computer
Oh,
or on
really?
TV. Yeah, it's
Okay,
televised.
well, guy, didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, anyhow, I heard a comment just on the general development that's happening on the east side of town here. And I wrote a letter to the Independent a couple weeks ago. And my feeling is, okay, originally I'm from Mar Vista, which is down in West LA. And I'm going to date myself. And when I was a 12-year-old kid, we used to ride our bikes around Marina del Rey. And I don't know if you know West LA at all, and it was the largest wetland in Southern California. Well, they built the marina in. And by the time I got to high school 4 years later, I'm just going, I got to get out of here. This place is crazy. So I'm just saying, this is how short a period it takes to wreck a town. Like for one thing that's going on to begin with is, and I'll try and keep this short, the whole drunk zone, I call it now, or the funk zone, it was supposed to be for artists, but it turns out it's pretty much all wine bars now. And I remember they were complaining about, they didn't want to have one more bar open up in State Streets because there's so many drinking establishments. Well, I'm not against, the wine bars. It's been down there in the evening and people, well, they're getting drunk and walking around, but it made so the real estate values, the artists aren't able to rent anything down there because everything's so expensive because the wine, the vineyards can afford to pay a big rent. So what you have is just a bunch of bars, basically. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the infill down here on the east side of town. The buildings are just too damn big, and they're too close to the property line for the perspective of the existing community. That's my opinion, but a lot of other people have that opinion too. So instead of having a quaint, charming area, you've just got a bunch of soaring, buildings that are just out of place. They're just too much square footage, and they're just too close to the property line. I think you all should go down to West LA and drive around for a couple hours and see what can happen to a community that used to look just like Santa Barbara. The whole place was it was wonderful. But now, I wouldn't want to live there, and there's a lot of other people, the refugees that have moved up here or out of the area. And one of the main things that's happened now is the impact of the traffic around town. Of course, they've got things torn up, and the Castillo is under construction, but how are you going to deal with all this traffic that's coming in? Because that is going to be a big factor, and it's going to make this town, in a lot of ways, unlivable. So where are the plans for alternative transportation, and the people that are building, where are they putting their parking? And if they have to build parking underneath, well, that just makes this buildings go up even higher. And so I've probably got a few other things to say, but I'll stop it there. But I just think that what's allowing to be built is just out of character. And I don't know, are you guys all architects?
Well, we're in the profession, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. And there was, you may not be aware, but 4 years ago, the city, after 10 years of citywide debate and
Right.
vignettes and public comment and input from professionals and so on, there were certain areas of the city that were designated for higher density. And that changed the zoning laws of Santa Barbara and designated specific areas where denser, taller, more massive buildings could occur. And so since then, we've seen a bunch of projects, bigger projects than we're normally used to seeing. And some of those areas are in like one and two story, smaller, single-family home areas.
Pretty much the whole east side.
Well, no, it's not but it's not the whole east side that you can build taller buildings now. They're very specific designated areas. Anyway, if you want to learn more about that, Matthew's a good person to turn to. He can give you some references. You can go online and you can find out about it, but it's,
Right,
it's
well, I'd like
specific
to-
designated areas
Yeah, well.
because we have such a desperate housing need where people who work here don't have housing.
So
They're
here,
just simply
so
using
that's why I
housing.
heard that the buildings that they put up on Cedar Chavez, that they've got 10-foot ceilings in them, and the rents are $2,800. So it's just to relieve the rental market at that level. So it's not really low cost housing.
Most of it's not. That's true.
Right, so how's that helping the east side out? Because everybody over there
It's
is
been a
just scratching
debate.
by.
It's been a debate. It's a continuing debate.
Okay,
It
so
comes
then
up
why
in
don't they
city
put it-
council.
Why don't they put it to a town vote? Why don't they
Well,
make
it has
it public?
been. It has been.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it's time to do it again because people are pissed. And
Okay.
they're only going to get madder when the traffic gets worse and the buildings go up and people, they grumble. They just don't like it.
Okay.
Now,
We need to go on with the meeting.
that's
but
fine. I've
it's-
just got one
but
book
thanks for your comment.
I'd like to suggest to you. It was published in 1938. It's called Park and Recreation Structures. And it was all the work the CCC did back in those days. It was part of the New Deal, Roosevelt. And it's got all the work they did for the parks around the country. And the Hoey Park's in there, Steckel Park, Foster Park, and Ventura. And it shows the dimension that they built stuff at that period. And you can just see how effective it was, the materials they used and the dimension of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on the internet. And
What's it called?
it's Park and Recreation Structures.
Okay.
And like I say, Nahoe Park's in there, and it just goes all the county, state, and national parks.
Thanks.
So okay,
Appreciate it.
well,
Thanks for
I
your
appreciate
time.
it too, and
I have a book to recommend
okay.
for you. 1938 book of small houses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Publication of
I
a,
think your mic's off.
so too. Publication of a group that was commissioned by
You
the
dropped your-
government.
Yeah.
You dropped your mic.
There's just no end to this. The government commissioned dozens of the best architects in the country to design small houses,
Right, and
under 1,000 square feet.
right,
And
exactly.
they were beautiful.
That's
This
great.
was in the middle of the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
This is when there was a lot of labor, skilled labor, unemployed, and the whole idea was to encourage people to build small houses.
Okay, well,
That was, small is beautiful, et cetera, et cetera.
right, and I'll look that up. It's the same year this other book was published.
Book of small houses.
And in this Park and Rec book, there's architectural drawings because they hired the best architects or as among the best, and they're all hand-drawn, drawings, and then they hired journeyman carpenters or masons and got these groups of guys from the Depression that didn't have as much talent, but they went around the country and built all these beautiful buildings. And I know that the things that I think are effective small housing are all these little bungalows they built in town. There's a bunch of examples around them. But, what's the legacy we're going to leave? And by the way, I saw the Pearl Chase documentary. It was very good. It was at the library, so everybody might want to check that out.
Thanks very much.
Good luck. Thank you.
Very much.
We have one more public comment. This is a letter written by Anna Marie Gott. Maybe Howard would be willing to read it.
Dear Commissioners, I am formally requesting that the Architectural Board of Review
Which way does this go? Left,
Yep, that was good.
left,
Away from mute.
away from me? Depends on,
Towards the.
okay, so it should be working now?
It sounds like it is. Yeah.
Okay. Architectural Board of Review or individual commissioners ask the City Council to place the issue of converting residential homes to hotels, short-term vacation rentals, STRs, on their agenda in early September. As you are aware, the condominium and hotel conversion ordinance allows for the conversion of residential units to be permanently converted to use as hotels, STRs, and only units 1,000 square feet and greater require a development plan approval finding, while units under 1,000 square feet do not. No conditions of approval are required for either type of hotel, STR, what does that stand for? Short-term rentals. And our city attorney, Ariel Colon, has told me that conditions can only be added by legislative action. This means that our city council must take action. Because no conditions of approval can be added when a home is converted to a hotel STR, the permit or conversion could never be revoked, even if there are substantial nuisance behaviors such as noise or the owner is illegally renting a second or third unit on the same property as illegal STRs. There are also no limits on the number of hotels STRs a single person can have, and there are no annual limits when a single unit is converted. As an aside, there are 2 documented cases where a legal hotel STR was permitted and 1 or more illegal STRs are being operated from the same address, i.e. 522 Garden and 1805 Chapala. In addition, with the conversion of 414 Ruth Avenue to commercial use as a hotel STR, David Sullins will have removed 2 residential units from our housing stock, and he owns more properties under 1,000 square feet. Small single-unit conversions under 1,000 square feet can occur quite quickly. The Ablett House, 1805 Chapala, 316 West Pedregosa, and 513 Santa Barbara took 3, 7, 16, and 12 days, respectively, to be converted permanently into use as a hotel STR. Most of were over the counter permits, and in one case a bedroom was described as a study which did not require a parking space. Logic and common sense cannot be applied by city staff when reviewing plans, and I suspect this will not be the last time we will see bedrooms turned into an alternate use just to avoid parking requirements. Action by the City Council is the only way the issue of hotels, STRs, will be resolved, and the first step is placing this on the City Council's agenda. Every housing unit counts, and in my opinion, sound community planning should not be strictly applied to units 1,000 square feet and above, and we should not be in the habit of converting residential units to permanently commercial use as hotel STRs when Santa Barbara has a housing crisis. Thank you, Anna Marie Gott, who's not here today. Is that right?
Yeah, she's not here.
P.S. In an election year, our residents should know who will fight to preserve our residential housing stock and who won't. Is that what you want me to
Okay,
read?
yes, thank you so much.
Here's another one from Anna Marie Gott. You want to read this? Me to read this? It's a shorty.
I don't know what this is about.
That's the
This
letter.
is just to provide us with the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Howard. This is another letter, formally requesting, okay. This is also from Anna Marie Gott saying, Dear Commissioners, I'm formally requesting that this project, this is 414 Ruth Avenue, is that on today's agenda? No, not on today's agenda, so. Be pushed up to the full board, and that the Historic Landmarks Commission requests the city attorney to look into the parking requirements for this and all hotel short-term vacation rental STR conversions. I'm requesting this based upon an email sent to me this morning by Ariel Colon, and this is dated August 9th. Mr. Colon stated that the issue of requiring handicap parking for hotels STRs has not been resolved, unquote. In my opinion, until this issue can be resolved, no reviewing body or anyone on the city staff should approve another hotel STR. Okay, so we're going to close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes for the Architectural Board of Review meeting of July 31st. And
Mr. Chair,
yes,
really quick. That day was a holiday, and so it is printed wrong on the agenda. It really is the August 1st.
August 1st,
2017.
Right, I see that. Thank you. So, and since I was not present, I will not be commenting on those minutes. Amy, would you mind walking us through that?
Sure. So far,
I also. Okay. Did it just burn out?
no, it's just really loud. Okay. Does anyone have any comments on number 1? Number 2.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yeah.
For item 2, 6018, Alameda Padre Serra,
Yep.
the board took a straw vote, which reads, how many board members can support the modifications as proposed, which failed. And we had previously had a conversation about this project with Jaime Limon, discussing the board's role in supporting or not supporting modifications in terms of
Right.
explicitly. Like he had said, the board is able to
Give comments
Give
on why
comments.
we can't support them.
and so we were suggesting a possible revision could be that the design has not shown sufficient attempts to mitigate the need for modifications.
I think that makes sense because a lot of the comments that we're asking in here, especially the open space proposed, needed to be clarified, and that was one of the modifications, and we're not clear on how much they're under in order to make that judgment. So are you saying just that to add to the minutes that the applicant hasn't provided?
I'm just asking that the wording, that we reconsider the wording for the straw vote, just because it puts the board in a position of approving or not approving mods, which is not the role of this board. It really is about the design. So if we can just say that
Sure.
the design has not lend itself to
The,
not
Ye-
requiring modifications.
Yeah, I guess, and board members can chime in. I guess the main thing I think that we are taking that straw vote on is that the design is still has not been clear enough to the board, because a lot of the drawings, they don't correspond or coordinate with one another.
Okay.
So, I guess it could be, so that, I don't know, do you want us to word that into what the motion, how the motion reads?
The motion, for the most part, is fine. It really is just that straw vote.
Oh, that's what I meant, the straw vote.
Yeah. So if you could just reword it to talk more about the design rather than the modifications themselves.
Sure. I suppose it was how many board members can support.
The project is proposed.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. The project as proposed, which, and I think that's essentially in all of our comments, kind of backs the reasoning for.
If you were to change the straw vote to say that, I would still vote the same.
Right, yeah. And that actually, that would make sense because we were the three that voted, or were voting.
Opposed.
Because Lisa abstained.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
yeah. Yes. Did anyone have any comments on that one? Number 3. And then 4. Five. 6. Or 7 and 8. Just make 8 basically listed out each of our comments. So. Okay. We have a first. David first, second?
I'll second.
Howard, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
abstention.
1 abstention.
All right, thank you. Consent calendar for August 14th.
For the August 14th consent agenda for the Architectural Board of Review, item A, 311 West Montecito Street, was given final approval as submitted. Item B, 520 East Yananali Street, was postponed at the applicant's request. Item C, 1136 East Montecito Street, was given project design approval and continued indefinitely to consent with comments.
All right. Do we need a first and a second for approval of those minutes?
No, first.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. And it seems like we're missing a consent calendar. Did we, from last time, usually we're approving 2 consent calendar minutes?
Last week was
So
canceled.
the
Oh, last week was canceled?
last week was canceled.
Oh, okay, thanks. So we're on to announcements, requests by applicants for continuances, et cetera.
So staff has a couple announcements today. We have Board Member Moore will not be joining us. Board Member LaPlaca will not be joining us. Item 1, the 400 block of Old Coast Highway was postponed at the applicant's request, and that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
1 and 2 or just 1?
Just one.
Okay, so,
I have one report, well, not really a subcommittee report, but from the city council meeting.
okay, please go ahead.
I went to the meeting on August 1st for 812 Jennings, the appeal for that short-term rental. City council ended up upholding our vote of denying that project, and it was a very long discussion, which I think that it will be coming up on city council agenda as a topic. But the big thing that I think pushed most of the board members was the parking, because there wasn't adequate parking. And they had a like a bonus spot for being residential and changing to commercial. And then it turns out that that area is turning into an M1 zone when the new ordinance goes into effect
Oh.
in October.
Huh.
So I think we're definitely going to see more discussion on short-term rentals and the rules between under 1,000 square feet, not having to go through design review board. There's a big discussion about that, and wondering where the line is and should there be one. So.
Okay, well, thanks for attending that.
Yeah, if I could piggyback on that too. I
Yes,
attended
David.
a city council meeting, I think the following one, regarding the appeal on Bath Street. Pretty much the same, I think, that you experienced. As parking was a very big issue. In that situation, the city council did uphold our original decision. They also agreed, though, that when we had looked at the project, we had concerns about the proposal, that there was, the way some of us felt, there was actually design solutions that weren't being presented that could have mitigated the parking situations. So they at least opened an avenue and said if the applicant is willing to maybe come back with a restructured agreement to address parking, getting it more situated with covered parking versus leaving it on the street, that would probably be a benefit to them. I think that's going to start to work into short-term rentals too. And they reiterated what Board Member Tripp just said about the 1,000 square feet. They felt that whether it's 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, it should still go through design review process because it is affecting issues of context and compatibility. So I think one thing that the applicant's planner had raised issues with was what the final minutes reflected on versus what I had presented that were some of my issues and other board members' issues when we made the original decision. They were trying to argue that it was very arbitrary, but in fact we, I think, all had very specific concerns that were just not succinctly and clearly, line by line put out in the final minutes or in the motion. I kind of disagree with that. I think we were very clear. You could look at the minutes and see that, but going back on Board Member Campanella's point about maybe the communication is maybe on those kind of projects we look to maybe add more, specific comments, almost the way it was presented when you see the project for the first time on concept review. where each maybe board member is able to give a sentence or two to kind of make a more broadly painted review, because he felt that what was being presented in the minutes wasn't reflective of what our opinions were. I
Okay.
disagreed with that, but I could see how that could potentially become an issue with such contentious items.
Okay, well, thanks for attending that meeting, Matthew.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I also wanted to clarify just a point that was made at City Council. When reviewing these short-term rental projects, it is important. This is direction from the city attorney to the boards, is making site-specific findings for why something is unsupportable.
Okay.
And in this case, what in both these cases, it was the parking that became the issue that allowed them to uphold your denial. And so focusing on that rather than overarching issues of housing or really just community issues that's site specific is really important, because it can get really broad and hard to defend.
Okay, thanks. That's good guidance. I don't imagine we have any other subcommittee reports, so we'll go on to the regular agenda. And item 1 has been postponed, so we're on to item 2, 400-700 block North Lacumba Road. This is a proposal for new public sidewalks along the east side of North Lacumba near Cayecita. Project is comprised of the removal of plantings, demolition of curbs, and the construction of 370 linear feet of sidewalk. Also proposed are 2 ADA-compliant pedestrian access ramps, 3 reconstructed driveways, and 315 linear feet of new retaining walls. And this is part of a citywide sidewalk improvement program, and was submitted alongside proposed pedestrian improvements to the 400 block of Old Coast Highway. Project design approval is requested, and action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Eric Goodall. I'm the lead design engineer for this project. It, as that says, is a sidewalk infill project. It serves as a safe route to school, and it's funded by Measure A. The Old Coast Highway portion of the project will not be presented. That was item number 1 that was suspended till, I think it's 2 weeks from now. We can just start with the plans here and walk through the project.
Have we seen this before?
No, this is the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We saw the Salinas Street project, but it's not what we're seeing today.
So the La Cumbre portion starts on page 7 of 10. So here you'll see that simple reconstruction of a driveway to get the 4-foot wide ADA path that's required behind the driveway. Currently the path across the driveway does not meet ADA requirements. And then we have curb face sidewalk 6 feet wide filling in here. And that continues up the street in this missing portion of sidewalk as well. The reason for the 6-foot sidewalk rather than the standard pedestrian section of parkway and then sidewalk is it matches all of the existing through the corridor. And there are considerable restraints here we have fences, we have some steep grades, and a lot of utilities in this area. So the best location for the sidewalk is at the curb face.
If you can show us the photographs alongside the
Yeah, let me
improvements,
walk you
that would
through
be
that.
helpful.
So, let's see. At this driveway, it's this driveway here, and then this is the missing portion of sidewalk. There's mailboxes, which are located right there. And so we'll be redoing the back of the driveway there, and as well as the apron, to create a 2% walk at 4 feet width. Section of sidewalk here is shown in this drawing, and you can see some of the existing constraints are we have a fence and we have an existing wall for the resident. And so in order to construct the sidewalk, we're staying away from that section. Actually, I believe this section is right here.
So just let me ask a
Yes.
question, if I may. This driveway is that one?
Let me
Like a corner.
see. I believe this driveway is actually at this location. It's the existing driveway and existing section of concrete. So we're matching into the existing curbside or curb face sidewalk at that location. And then moving.
But
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand what's going on, because this is a road behind, this is Lacumba Road?
Yes.
Back behind the sidewalk? So what's between here and Lacumba Road?
So it's curb face here and the Lacumba Road.
We're seeing a curb face here, and we're seeing houses behind.
Yes. So in relation to the drawing, we're looking at
We're
this.
looking the other way.
So
Okay.
this is the existing missing section right here.
That helps.
And then the
I was
wall.
upside down.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the driveway at the south end of the project, and as we go up the street, we run into existing sidewalk at curb face, and that's the section we're seeing right here.
Okay.
So we're matching into that. As we continue up the street, this is, again, the actual location in relation to the drawing is this location. We have a lot of shrubs here and trees behind that, which you can see in the drawing at this location. We're going to have to cut back the shrubs a short distance in order to get that 6 foot wide concrete section, but we will have a 6 foot walk at this location.
Okay.
We will have to reconstruct this driveway apron.
Photo background.
Yes. We will reconstruct this driveway apron, which is shown here. And that's, again, to get that 4 foot wide section at the back of walk that's 2% cross slope. It's going to be minor modifications to the driveway, but we'll ensure that the post-construction condition is not worse than the pre-construction condition as far as vehicles exiting the driveway. This picture is of this driveway directly adjacent. Ideally, we would have just tied the sidewalk directly into the driveway, but again, there's no accessible path of travel along this driveway, so it involves the reconstruction of the driveway apron and the installation of a 4 foot sidewalk section at the back of the apron. Then there's a long stretch of existing sidewalk you can see between just south of Cayecita up to almost Penn Place. That it's all existing curb face sidewalk. But as we approach Penn Place, we have no sidewalk, and we actually have considerable slope in this location. And this is one of the 2 locations that involve retaining walls. As you can see in this picture here, it's about a 5 foot or 5.5 foot difference between curb face and the existing fence up here at the property. So the retaining wall we're looking at in this location will be about 5.5 feet tall above finished grade. It will extend from the property line all the way around the corner, terminating at the end of a radius on Penn Place. There's an existing palm tree there, and another clump of little trees here that will be removed or are slated to be removed for the installation of the sidewalk. They end up directly in line with the sidewalk at this location. There's the possibility to install at least one jacaranda tree back here. That's the specimen tree for the streets. I need to work out those details with Tim Downey. But that is a potential to reinstall a tree in this location and maintain some of that shade. We will have parkway in this location. It's about 2.5 feet, and then we have the retaining wall directly behind the sidewalk at this location. The wall would be between 10 inches and 12 inches thick, depending on the material and how tall exactly it has to be in order to retain the soil. The type of wall I'm looking at here is a 1-inch stucco texture that will be an off-white color, and it will match the other retaining walls in this area. At this location, we also need a retaining wall, and that's shown in this drawing. The difference between the curb face and the fence in this location is only about 3 feet, and you can see the elevation difference in this picture here. So this retaining wall will be about 3 feet tall. Same finish proposed for this wall as it is for this retaining wall here. That is the extent of the sidewalk improvements. On the next sheet, we have some pictures indicating wall textures and finishes and heights of walls that are nearby to this location. So here, this is further up the street on La Cumbra, and it's just a knockdown stucco wall. Its height varies between 4.5 feet to 6.5 feet, and it's approximately 120 feet long. Here, this is on La Colina, and it is just a painted concrete wall. It's white painted. It varies in height between 1.5 feet and 3 feet tall. And over here, this is further, it's south of the proposed wall locations on La Cumbra, and it is another knockdown stucco wall that's 2.5 feet in height. So what I'm seeking approval for on this is primarily the finish for the retaining walls. And I'm proposing that they be concrete with the knockdown stucco finish. I believe.
Okay.
The next sheet is just proposed typical section for the concrete wall, and that will be modified with the final design when we determine the exact finish and design for the wall.
So knockdown stucco, I should know what that means, but what does that mean? I don't know it.
It's the typical stucco finish that's applied as more of a veneer to the wall. It has no actual structural section, and it's just the terminology for the, I think it's about 1 inch thick that they apply the stucco on the wall.
There's like no metal lath or anything, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And is there a reason why you're not wrapping it over the top there? Or?
Yeah, that was going to be.
There wasn't.
Okay.
That's definitely something that could be done.
Okay. All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
That does.
Okay. So we'll go on to questions from the board, and we'll start with David.
You answered one right now, or you asked one already, which is good. The other one was just about.
Do we have to open public comment?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We need to open public comment for this project. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this project? Seeing no one, we'll go to questions. David.
With that stucco finish, do you have to provide any kind of, or I guess first for the wall itself, and then for the finish, do you have to provide any kind of expansion joints or control joints every so often along the face?
I'll have expansion joints just for the concrete itself so that it doesn't crack, and those will be every 25 feet. There will be weep holes every 25 feet, so we'll have consistent expansion joints at every 25 feet. There may be expansion joints at less than 25 feet depending on the geometry for the specific area. But they will be required so we don't have cracking of the concrete and then subsequently cracking of the stucco.
And then the stucco too, can it also expand that 25 feet and can that align up with the expansion joints
believe
themselves?
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No further questions.
Okay. Thanks, David. Amy?
You mentioned some areas for planting.
Yes.
Is there, in a lot of the photos that you showed, there'll be like will there be, I guess, more opportunities for potential plantings? Especially where there's like a wall with vines growing on it. It looks like the vines are on the
On an existing
side, yeah, on an existing wall.
Looking at this picture, I think.
Yeah. Or that one
better
too.
shown in this picture.
Yeah, just areas like this. If we can just, in the examples that you gave for the walls, looks like there's kind of different opportunities where maybe there's room for a single tree, or you have some planting at the back of the sidewalk. Have those all been considered, or is there room to consider more planting?
So in this location and this location, the walls are actually constructed on private property, which allows for more space between the sidewalk and the wall to install any landscape. I don't know the exact dimension between the sidewalk and the wall, but in my design, there's only about 2 feet of space between the back of sidewalk and the wall. Now I could relocate the sidewalk closer to the wall. Actually, there isn't any space between the back of wall.
You said the sidewalks were a little bit wider.
The sidewalks are proposed to be, let me just
6
flip
feet.
to that section here. So at the retaining walls, we actually only have 5 feet of sidewalk. And we get about 2.5 feet of parkway with the 5 feet of sidewalk, and then the retaining wall is right at the back of the walk. There's about 1.5 feet between the wall and the property line, and that's for constructability and to install a footing,
Okay. So there's
which effectively eliminates a space in which we could plant trees or other shrubs.
right. Okay. I guess in areas where there's no planting or anything, just in looking at the other photo, looking for opportunities to possibly put in trees,
Yeah, there's the potential we could install
like a single tree.
a tree
not
well
a-
there and notch the sidewalk around it to give it space to grow.
Okay.
There's the potential for that. I'd have to work with Tim Downing to verify that we can find a space big enough for the tree.
Sure.
There's the potential.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Howard?
Yeah, I have no questions.
Okay. Just a couple. So in spaces like this, where you're removing the palm, I guess this would be another opportunity for tree planting?
Yes, and we have there's quite a lot of room between the curb face here and this retaining wall. So there's a high probability we can fit at least one tree in this location with some mulched ground cover or something like that.
Uh-huh. And the reason you're not presenting any proposals for landscaping today is?
In these locations, and similarly along Lucumbra and recent projects, we've installed mulch in the narrow parkway here. I haven't had the time to work with Tim as far as how many trees we can fit in there and what logistically we can fit.
Okay. And then the detail. So one question about the detail, one other one. So I was just noticing note A, 4-inch diameter drains at 25 feet. 4-inch plastic pipe under sidewalk to discharge through curb face. So the sidewalk level would actually be above the weep hole?
Yes.
Okay.
So the weep hole would go through as a typical city standard curb drain outlet,
Okay,
and it would
all right.
outlet to the curb face.
Very good. Okay, comments? David?
I would just follow up on one of the comments that the other board members presented about considering how that top of the stucco terminates, whether you wrap it over the backside to a certain point, because I noticed you don't have a cap being proposed anywhere. Just to clarify that part. Showing maybe on a typical elevation that you have that spacing, whether that looks like, every 25 feet, or if you are breaking that up even less, just to get a sense of what that actually is going to start looking like. And then maybe provide a sample, just with the finished proposed, this knockdown stucco, what that'll look like with the color and everything on there.
Okay.
And then maybe add to the plan spacing out some, whether they're tree wells or planting wells every so often, just to provide some relief there. I know with accessibility, if you meet, I think, was it under 8 feet or something, you can reduce your height, I think, down to 30 inches, so you can maybe work with that. If you have to create a couple pinch points every so often to provide some relief, just to see, we can soften that up a little bit.
Right.
But otherwise, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Amy?
Yeah, I agree with David's comments. I think the proposal it makes sense where you're connecting the sidewalks, but I do think that just wrapping the plaster and then providing areas for planting and some trees would be a benefit.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Howard?
I agree with those comments.
Okay. So the motion would be, can we, are board members comfortable with giving this project design approval without proposal for landscaping? And the landscaping to return? Seems like there might be a change to the sidewalk configuration, although it's not going to be substantial. I would think you could do it on the consent calendar. We could send a consent calendar,
Yeah.
and then when you're ready with a proposal for trees, it could be reviewed at that level.
And so the sample for the wall would come to consent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's fine. I don't think it's going to change, it shouldn't change the design.
You're right.
Go along with
Not
that.
significantly. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. So the motion would be indefinite continuance unless you want to come back next week to the consent calendar.
I don't think I'll have time
Okay.
to come back next week.
Indefinite continuance to the consent calendar with
PDA.
project design approval with following comments. Provide a stucco cap that wraps over the top and down the back at least a couple of inches to the wall. Provide color for the stucco finish. Provide a proposal for at least one and possibly 2 trees to be included as part of the improvements. Any other thing I missed?
If I could, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
We need a seconder.
I was
or
just
if you
gonna
want under discussion.
If I could, you want me to do under discussion?
Sure.
Okay, I'll second it then.
Okay, thanks.
Just maybe clarifying that if we can provide relief every so often in terms of, in plan view of planting strips, even if it's not trees. I know you said 1 or 2 trees, but it'd still be nice to see planting in addition to the trees. So if there's an opportunity to reduce the width to still comply with accessibility, but get some planting wells.
Okay. How would you state that then, as part of a motion?
Explore where and how to provide planting wells
Additional
Additional
planting
planting
areas.
for relief.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So we're on to item 3, 835 East Canon Perdido Street.
Did you do these already?
Yeah, we did those. Nancy might want that. This is a project we've reviewed 4 times, and it's a proposal for a 3-story, 50-unit multifamily residential development under the AUD program. And I'm not going to read the long paragraph describing this project. Board members are familiar with it. It was last reviewed July 17th, and action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. And we have our comments from last time. Which I'll read them all, I suppose, and then we'll go back and see how they were addressed one by one. So the motion was project design approval with the applicant. No, sorry, that motion failed. The motion was continued to the next available agenda. Number 1, the board appreciated the work that has been done so far. Number 2, the 3rd floor parapet needs to have more variation in height on the Felinda and Canon Perdido side. Number 3, restudy the treatment of the roof area adjacent to the corner tower and the height of the tower to provide more prominence. Number 4, provide further development of the Art Deco style in the building, such as brackets at the canopies and balconies, a more explicit Art Deco design for the railings, and additional plaster detailing that is similar or compatible with what is being done at the tower. Number 5, study the connecting roof elements between the open masses and consider lowering them, having them appear different in material, and minimize height and depth as much as possible. Number 6, the Historic Landmarks Commission landscape architect should conduct a courtesy review and provide ABR with comments. Number 7, the applicant is to provide reference images for the Art Deco detailing. Number 8, applicant to study reducing the height of the building. That was a 5-0 vote. Miller and LaPlaca were absent. Welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
Your names, please.
Detlev Pikert with RRM Design Group.
Lisa Plowman with RRM Design Group.
And Andrew Fuller with the applicant.
All right.
How would you like to do this? Do you want to go through one at a time?
Well, yes, but
Okay.
I thought I'm going to start with the last one first, just because I think you'll understand in a minute why I want to do that. And then we can go through the rest of them one at a time. But the first thing I wanted to point out is I think the meeting kind of went a little bit sideways last time. And I think in part that might have been because our street section exhibit had an error in it that I didn't catch until we were actually in the meeting. I was looking at it and I thought there's something wrong here. I didn't quite know what it was at that moment, but when we went back and looked at it, it was pretty obvious what happened. And you can see the Shelton CAF building on the side there, and we had somehow or other, our drafter had lowered that building, so thinking that the grade line was the top of the hedge, and in fact, that made it look like it was about 8 or 9 feet taller than it actually is. And as you can see, just for reference purposes, we show a red line across there that connects both the cow and the calf, and they're roughly level with the the top of the parapet, generally across the building. So really, and I think the point being that the building's 36 feet tall, essentially, which is not a tall building. That's a 3-story building. That's well below the the usual allowable height of about 45 feet. And in fact, in the zone district, it's 60 feet, which we're not anywhere near proposing that. We very purposely and specifically proposed a 3-story building here, not adding any 4th story, with the intent of creating these smaller units, kind of maintaining a relatively low profile, and one that's very much compatible with really a lot of the buildings in the neighborhood. And just for reference purposes, I'm going to just show a couple of photographs that show you that. This is a view of the back of the existing property, and that parapet there is 29 feet tall, just as an example. And that's existing on the site today, so we're just a few feet taller than that. Right across the street, you have a building that's 3 stories and approximately 35 feet tall. I want to come to that.
The Habitat.
Yeah.
That's the Habitat building, exactly. And then down the street, we have the National Guard building, which has a eave height of 27 feet, but the ridge of the roof is, another 5 feet higher than that. And of course, the tower is a lot. Oh, I'm sorry, 29 feet to the ridge. Yeah, I'm looking at it upside down.
36
29 to the eve,
to the eve.
plus 5.
Plus the 5 feet. So again, and you can. This really, I think, shows the massiveness of that building in the context of the neighborhood.
What is your height of eye here?
Well, this is taken from the roof, I think,
Yes.
of one of the buildings. So just to kind of get an overview of the
The
neighborhood.
roof of this building?
Yeah,
What did you say this was?
29 feet.
look at this one.
Yeah. I mean, the idea was just to kind of give you a view of the fact that it's a pretty tall building. The CAF building itself, to the top of the CAF there, I think is about 35 feet. And then looking the other direction towards the Milpas Street building, that's 26 feet because it's really just a single-story element right there. But the building itself is about 10 feet higher than our building, just by virtue of the slope going up
The
up
elevation
street.
change, yeah.
And then this is another view of buildings, kind of, and looking up Clifford towards Milpas, you can see there are buildings there that are in the background, particularly, that are quite tall. And then here's another building that's about 35 feet,
And that's just to the eve.
right?
And there's a mansard
Where
roof
is this?
there too. That's just down the street, about three
It's a
buildings down.
high school.
Yeah.
or
Is this the high
junior-
school?
Yeah.
Yeah, high
Yeah.
school. There's some classrooms there. So there's a mix of lots of different buildings there, but I don't think a 36-foot building, which is our building, is at all outsized. And I think the other thing is, when you look at the photo sims, you'll see that, let me see, this is looking back from the CAF building. This is the,
Is this with the height corrected?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, David, we've got some extra ones there for you.
Is this with the height corrected?
The height is correct in this, yeah. That only happened in that one view. It was just an anomaly that, it's kind of happened there.
One
But
thing
these,
might be noted is that was a 38 feet that went to the planning commission, I believe.
actually,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So that is actually 38 feet tall.
Right, that is correct. That's the,
Oh.
no, it's not, it doesn't reflect some of the current design details, but the massing is all the same. It's just that it was 38 feet tall, but at the Planning Commission, if any of you had the opportunity to review the Planning Commission tapes, I hope you did, you know, they were very favorably disposed towards the project, even at 38 feet, but we presented the idea that we might be able to incorporate some stacked parking inside the parking garage, and that required that little bit of extra height, and that we could lower the building 2 feet if they agreed that we didn't need to worry or be concerned about providing stacked parking inside the building. And they made a decision by a straw vote to ask us to lower the building by that 2 feet, and that's how we end up with 36 feet.
And I think that had in part had to do somewhat with the fact that we're creating new on-street parking in the neighborhood because we're closing a lot of driveways. So around 5 to 6 spaces will be created.
And then the other couple of factors I want to point out is that, you know, when we first came in with the original building, which was that sort of more industrial sort of loft-style building, and, you know, that didn't go over very well, we totally revised the design and created this sort of, I don't like the expression wedding caking, but that's exactly what we did. Is you know, at considerable additional cost to the project, we created these offsets. You have the first story, and then we offset 5 feet further back. We take the balconies and cut them off at the upper level to create a kind of a 2-story element there, and then stepping back to the 3rd story. So there's an awful lot of modulation of the mass going on that, you know, we very conscientiously did in order to really create a building that had enough kind of texture and variation in mass to you know, address a lot of the concerns of the original presentation that we made. And I think to some of the comments, David, I remember commenting on the Felinda side and saying that he would like us to cut the mass back there. We actually took a unit that would have been a premium unit at the corner and cut it off and put it elsewhere in the project in order to be responsive to that comment. I think we've gone a long way toward really addressing your concerns. But I think the most important point that I can make is we have 10-foot plates for the 2 stories of residential. We think that's really critical. These are really small units. The studio's about 420 square feet. And we want those spaces to be really livable. We want light, as much light as we can get. We're hanging the windows at 9 feet, having very tall windows. And the doors, we have a transom panel over the sliding glass doors in order to get that additional sense of space and light and air into these units. And it's so important because, you know, a simple decision like, well, maybe we should lower it a couple of feet just for, I don't know what purpose it would be in this case, what it would actually accomplish, but it would lock in a less desirable living environment for people who might be living there for the next 75 years, for all we know. So it's a really important consideration, and we feel very strongly about it, especially when, you know, bottom line is we're looking at a building that's 36 feet, 3 stories.
And I think that
compatible with
there
the
was a
neighborhood.
conscious decision on the developer's part to make those units small. I mean, they could have added almost another 10,000 square feet under the AUD. But because they wanted to keep the building as small as they could and provide as many units as they could, you know, sort of, which is actually consistent with the purpose of the AUD, greater number of smaller units. So they really made this effort to kind of try and keep the building as small as they possibly could and still make it work.
Yeah, and that really is, you know, one of the purposes of the AUD was to create smaller units as opposed to creating more luxury style
I think
developments.
the average unit size is about 633 square feet.
So, but I heard the number that he threw out was 400 something. You have, how many are that smaller size?
How many studios? do we have?
26.
15, 3, and 3.
It says 20 studio units.
Okay, so there's 18 that are under 450.
Yeah.
Another 3 that are 500. 2 that are 550. 2 that are 770.
Yeah.
And
Those are
then,
the 2 bedrooms.
The 2 bedrooms, yeah.
yeah. So then the 2 bedrooms.
So the 2 bedrooms are all about 800 square feet, which is pretty small for a 2-bedroom.
Yeah. But it looks like,
One unit that's larger because
It's just a matter of
it was
how
just a,
it's
yeah,
configured
on the
site.
site.
are the two bedrooms all on the upper floors?
No,
No,
they're stacked, one on top of the
They're
other.
stacked, okay.
Let's get this in this thing.
But I don't think we have any on the ground level. I think they're all studios on there. I can't remember.
I think there may be a two-bedroom on the ground as well.
Okay, so the average is 633.
Right, as opposed to 811.
Yeah.
That's a pretty small average.
Yeah,
That's a
I
very-
mean,
that's a pretty small
the
average.
point that we're making is, I want to get to a sheet that,
The
wanna talk
other
about
thing
the
I think we
design.
want to talk about too is that we also consciously pulled the building back from the back of the sidewalk to a greater setback than is actually required. So we have 7.5 feet rather than the 5 feet. And actually, if you averaged it, we'd have a greater than a 7.5 foot setback. So there was a lot of thought put into that in wanting it to fit into that neighborhood.
Okay. So should we go on to the other items?
yeah, let's go through the design issues, and we'll go through them one by one. I think most of them involve the elevations and
Third floor parapet.
Yep.
so, it may not be as apparent in the three-dimensional rendering, but and you'll see in the, when we move to the elevation sheet, you'll see where the variation in height takes place. Like, for example, we raised up the parapet on this element here. In some case, we raised the parapet on other elements to create, a variety of roof lines, within reason. So, in some cases, the parapet would be at 36 feet, but in some couple of cases, we had to jump it up to another 1.5 feet taller in order to get that little bit of variation in the height. You also see we raised the height of the elevator tower because we wanted it to be, and I think that was one
Was
of
a
the things that
comment, yeah.
came out of our comments, that we wanted it to be a more prominent, iconic kind of feature of the building. And I think, I really think it looks a lot better being a little bit taller and more prominent there. And I'll talk about the design of it a little bit.
So here on the Felinda side, you can see, you have a 2-story element here, a 2-story element here, and then a gap in the building here, and then movement along created by those capitals.
And then the suggestion that this kind of colonnade at the third floor here, we lowered the roof, creating a much lower roof profile, and basically lowering the visual parapet height in relation to the other building elements there as well. We'll go on to the next one.
So this one had more or less to do with the Art Deco style and demonstrating that we were adding some elements that sort of went further in that direction. And I think you can see that there's been a lot done to kind of move much further, actually, into the Art Deco style.
But one thing I want to be clear about, that this was never intended and is not now intended to be a full-on Art Deco building. I think if you look up that style of architecture, it really consists of very strong verticals, which we did not feel was, sequences of very strong verticals, which we did not feel like would be appropriate for this building or for the site. But we did want to kind of give a nod, as we have said on a number of occasions, towards the Art Deco and the appearance of the Cow building, which has some elements of that style of architecture. I think at the last meeting, you asked us to do a few things further in that direction. I think we've really accomplished that here, and I'll show you some, details that inspired us. One of which is our very own post office, which, on the surface, you would not think of it as being a true Art Deco building, but when you look up close, it actually takes a number of details, subtle details, and utilizes them around the building. And we're kind of trying to do something similar here with the tower, using the strong verticals there with the sort of typical Art Deco detailing and this sort of Art Deco light fixture that we use throughout the project. We've taken and created this kind of relief element around the entrance to sort of enhance the entrance. We've incorporated some fin elements that, in this case, these are actually reveals where the stepping occurs. And then up at the parapet, We've got some sort of fin details, which again are kind of a fairly typical detail that we find in Art Deco buildings. Howard asked us to create some brackets. Originally, we were just going to cantilever the canopies over those openings, but Howard said, hey, we should have some brackets there. So we did incorporate some brackets, again, using detailing that reflects some of the other railing details which we show around the
And those are new
building.
too. Those railing details are new too. And then also, you wanted to see some greater detail about what the railings were along the balconies, and that's really what it's supposed to reflect. It's hard to make out at that size, but that's the design.
It'll just be a continuation of what
Yeah.
you see there. The gates, they have these kind of staggered verticals, and we'll have them throughout the design of the railings there. I'm trying to think of what else. And yeah, you can see some of those details here. I do have.
Want to bring that out.
Kevin asked us to bring some reference details, and not necessarily always agree that that's the ideal thing to do, but in this case, I think it's okay. These are some pictures of the post office right here, and you can see the sort of Art Deco kind of keystone and the little relief there, and even the metalwork and the lamps. You can see the tower. You'll see a lot of towers of that nature.
That's the post office.
And then the colonnade there, and then the fins on some of these other buildings, and even the massing of some Art Deco buildings that you find where you have a lot of variation in the mass, etc. So that's kind of an indication of some of our inspiration.
So the next one, Diddy, had to do with the canopy that was in the gap.
Yes.
So we need to look at
So
that.
we need to look at the elevation sheet for that.
And actually, there was an error in that drawing set as well. But you can
And
see.
Amy, you brought that to light. I think you were right. The canopy that we had there was sort of heavy plaster, and it wasn't really intended that way. It just kind of got one of those things that got away from us. But what we're showing here is a very kind of narrow canopy, and it's important that we have a canopy there because it is the continuation of the corridor system. So we wanted to have that covered, and also we'll be needing that to run some utility lines that will be continuous around the corridor system. And I think that really lightens that up. You only really see it from one particular vantage point, and then there's going to be a tree in front of it. But nevertheless, I think it just creates a more delicate connection between those two buildings. So I really appreciate your drawing that to our attention. What else?
Okay. The landscape. I don't know, did we get comments from the?
Oh, we did, apparently.
Okay. The landscape architect isn't here, but we thought that everyone was in agreement that the landscape plan was in pretty good shape.
Thank you. So here are the comments. Well, we'll save this for the comment period, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take those in advisement. So I think,
Let's look at that site plan just really quickly, because I think we want to emphasize
Oh, yeah.
too, one of the other decisions that was made really early on was to try and ensure that the single-family development that's along Nepal, let's go to our landscape plan, it shows it better.
But it is.
Was to make sure that we were stepped back from the single-family houses that were along here pretty significantly, and I believe, I think it's about 28 feet to here. We have it on our site plan, actually, we can dimension it.
From where to where?
This is 20 feet here.
10th scale.
So this is 20 here,
So this one, or-
yeah, this is 20 here, and this is 28 here to the building face that's up at the second story.
okay.
So the first floor is to 20 here, and then you've got a single-story bike shed. So I think this is actually 12 and a half from this to here. And then we worked with the neighborhood to take a unit off here on the second level to really protect the views of some of the residential uses that are right here over there on the corner.
I remember that.
And that shows up in that photo sim.
Okay, well, I think you've addressed our comments from last time.
I just want to kind of close by saying, you know, this housing is obviously really, really important to the city. It's a fantastic opportunity to take a site that is really, you know, kind of nominally used for industrial purposes in the middle of a neighborhood there, and turn it into housing that's going to really add vitality to the Milpas corridor and to the neighborhood in general.
And remove a manufacturing use that actually has trucks coming in and out and
a lot
equipment
more
that's-
noxious in a residential neighborhood than this certainly will be. And I think we've really addressed the comments that you had for us last time, and feel very excited about moving forward with this. So,
Okay, thank you for your presentation. And we'll open public comment now. We have quite a few speakers and things to read. So just to remind folks, we want to comment on the architectural character and compatibility issues associated with this project, and that each speaker is going to be given 2 minutes only. And please don't try and press beyond that because we have so many speakers today. So first is Greg Tice. And I won't start the timer until you're ready at the mic.
Mr. Chairman,
Board. If you could state your name to start with.
my name is Greg Tice. I live at 818 North Voluntario, which is approximately 4.5 blocks up the hill from this project, and have lived there for almost 50 years now. It's simply too big for the neighborhood in every way, shape, or form. I would lop the top story off. And if you look at this project and the one at 711 Milpas Capital Hardware, in terms of Milpas Street and our traffic, this is going to be the death of our neighborhood. There's a high school right next to this project. There's also a junior high. I don't know, has anyone driven to the high school when come in 2 weeks when the kids start? The kids don't walk to school anymore. That ended in the 70s. Mom brings them in the Range Rover. They drive themselves. It's an absolute nightmare. And I would like to also point out that they've narrowed and canyonized Milpas Street from Coda Street for 3 blocks to Canna Perdido Street, where it's 1 lane. One cannot make a left turn onto De La Guerra Street anymore because the cars are coming, 2 blocks full of cars come through each light cycle. So it's only 1 car per left turn. So everybody that lives in the neighborhood has now learned, don't try to make a left turn on De La Guerra in the afternoon because you simply can't do it. Same thing in the morning. So to add 50 units here and 75 units a block and a half away, let's put it this way. I have never seen a building like this removed. Deddy talked about 75 years from now. In 100 years from now, if this is a mistake, we're still going to be living with it. I thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Christine Neubauer? Newhouser. And the next person is Kathleen Morales. If you could get ready. Hello.
I'm Christine Newhouser. I'm grateful for the careful considerations of the board, your directions to lower the building by 3 feet if you could due to the unnecessarily high ceiling heights, to do more to make the building more interesting, not intrusive, and accentuate the Art Deco if that's the direction of the design, and to make the building more light and airy, and to reduce the massing that overwhelms the location. Again, these projects are being decided on a case-by-case basis if they're consistent with the general plan regarding bulk scale and compatibility with the neighborhood. However, the overall feel of our community is not being considered. What we'll end up with will be far different than what we have today if we don't look at the whole picture of, and specifically as a neighborhood. Speaking about I know the board asked them to bring pictures showing the building with the other houses in the neighborhood. And it's true, you know, the tower of the Armory and the People for Self-Help Housing is a 3-story building, but it's the back part of the building. It's the second row of the building, In other words, there's a house and there's a house behind it. And the difference is combining these parcels is what makes them so massive and seem so overwhelming in the neighborhood. What was I going to say? So the amount of traffic, the demand for parking, the loss of the city views that we experience every day. Our town has been designed to preserve the mountain views of the Riviera, the views of the Mesa, and the views of the sky for many. These numerous projects like this one will create havoc with what we have. It's not the only project being planned on the east side or the Milpas area. Our town's in a unique setting that many have sacrificed to create. Developers and owners before did not make as much as they could have for their bottom line, because the bottom line was not dollars and profit margins, but what was good for the whole of the community, for quality of life. Many want to come here for now, as they did then. Every real estate ad mentions the ocean or the mountain views. The real estate newsletter quotes, "Buyers are looking for and buying the views." So why should we throw that away? Once it's gone, except for those in a high-rise with a view. Is that my 2 minutes?
Yes. Thanks. Kathleen. And the next is Emma Brinkman.
My name is Kathleen Morales, and I've lived on the east side all my life. My grandparents lived there. We live there now. And I agree with Greg, it'll be a nightmare having a large building like that. In the morning, between Coda and Anapamu, in the morning with the high school kids and after school, there's no way you can go down Milpas or across town. You have to go back up to APS and either go all the way on APS to the Mission or one of the other streets to get across town. Besides people parking, now with these granny units, people are building those, there's no parking. People, what they're doing now, I live at the very end of Canna Perdido, straight up the hill. Short street, you can only park on one side. Most of your driveways are short. People are beginning now to come up, park on our streets, leave them, and then go back down. So it's kind of like squatters parking now, because there's so much building and so many things going on Milpas Street. With the county bowl, the junior high, the boys club, this will take away the character of the neighborhood. You know, Santa Barbara our forefathers didn't intend to have this. You're just changing everything, the integrity, the quality of life, more parking, more problems, more litter, more signs you have to put out, more noise. It's a disaster. I hope you can consider the people that live here and intend on staying here and not just living here part-time or making their buck and then leaving us with no quality of life anymore in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thanks. Emma? And next is Ann Hefferman.
Ready to go?
Yes, your name, please.
Emma Brinkman. I reside and own 1261 Farella Road, which is the Lower Riviera. My exit and entrance to my street and the Lower Riviera is Cannon Perdido. So it is a major thoroughfare coming and going, not only for myself, but my neighbors. I'm trying not to repeat what my other neighbors have said. My concern was about using the cow and the calf as a point of reference as far as the height for the building that the architects had shown. The cow and the calf is a very small, tiny little sculpture, and the cow a little bit bigger, the mama, but they're small. So, and the height of the building is massive. So I think it's kind of disingenuous to use those two as reference points to kind of describe the height and to use it as an example as a height to get to. So anyways, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks for coming today. Ann Hefferman, and next is Oswald DeRoss. Hello.
Hello. I'm Ann Hefferman. I'm a 20-year resident in Santa Barbara. I live at 921 East De La Guerra. My kids both went to all the neighborhood schools. appreciate the modifications in height that were requested at the last meeting. I still feel that the mass and scale of this design is way out of proportion to the surrounding neighborhood. My concerns are echoed among my neighbors. I have concerns about parking and traffic congestion, especially with regard, especially to the neighborhood schools, the Boys and Girls Club, Girls Incorporated, and the County Bowl when there are concerts. People will take alternate routes. They'll take the side streets, and the pedestrian traffic potential for accidents is going to increase. Even with the setback of 7 feet on the Canon Perdido side, I feel the mass of the building is too great for that setback. It feels too close to the sidewalk. The cow issue has always been something that really bothered me. I want those two cows to be able to see each other, and I'm not sure that they will. Because of these AUD projects, we're beginning to see this neighborhood significantly change. This project and the Capital Hardware project on Milpas are ominous, oversized anchors that have the potential to pave the way for more of the same. I support the need for workforce housing, but my hope is that our workforce will find these units affordable, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Oswald DeRoss, followed by Natasha Todorovic. Hello.
I'm Ozzy DeRoss. I appreciate being able to make my presentation. It's very similar to what these people have spoke so far, so I concur with their thoughts. I'm not going to go through all, repeat that.
Thank you.
I've been in a residence my whole 96 years, except for 4 years in the military, and I just felt it was necessary for me to express my position about this project and the other big box projects, what they're doing to the character of Santa Barbara. So you have to start someplace, and you're representing us as citizens. I ask you to reject this project as drawn in its huge configuration. And I thank you for listening to my concerns and represent us as we want to be represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha Todorovic. And that's followed by Justin Egreger.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good.
Don't envy you. You guys have a tough job.
Thank you for mentioning that. I agree.
So, yeah, Natasha Todorovic, Citizens for Livable Neighborhoods. Let's go back to the beginning of this conversation. What the applicant cited was neighboring buildings and their size and their height. So what they were doing was they were using the argument of what lay around in the context of the neighborhood to bolster their argument for these taller buildings. So I'd like to echo what our neighbors have been saying. The size, the bulk, the scale is just too high for this neighborhood. So when we start making exceptions, when we start cutting corners and saying, yes, this will work, and we'll just add that, and it's one little project, what we start doing is we start framing the precedent that other people will use, and things will just get higher and bigger and bigger. When you look at this, does this look like Santa Barbara to you? It doesn't look like Santa Barbara to me. This looks like something in Los Angeles. I was recently in a neighborhood I used to live in 25 years ago in Toronto. Used to have little, 2- and 3-story apartment houses, one next to the other. I walked in the neighborhood, I was like, where am I? Because all of the buildings have just gone to 30, 40 floors. So to echo what my neighbors have said, neighborhood compatibility, it doesn't fit. They're trying to build these shoe boxes to warehouse human beings. And the AUD has become a feeding frenzy for developers to take advantage of our neighborhood. What we're asking for, and you're seeing a shift on City Council right now about pausing the AUD. What we're asking for, which we don't have on the east side, are design guidelines. Rest of the city does. On the east side, we don't. So please pause this until we can get design guidelines for the east side so we can dictate and describe what it is that we want for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Egrera and Matt Wilker follows. Hello.
Hi, thank you. My name is Justin Egger. I've lived here for about 20 years, and I own a local property management business. So we manage around 1,000 units in the local area, and Santa Barbara is drastically facing a housing shortage. As I walk in here today, we have 4 vacancies out of 1,000. We are one of the larger property management firms in town, and what is happening is when one of the larger property management firm only has four vacancies, we're forcing the tenant base to move elsewhere. Right now, we're seeing workforce tenants move out of town, down to Ventura, down to Oxnard, up north to Santa Maria. A project like this will supply not only additional units to the market, but it'll also allow us to meet our current housing needs. A lot of people say that it only supplies units for high net worth, high income level people, but that's simply not true. People that rent these places right now rent our mid-level market units, and as they rent as they move up, it frees up space in the mid-level and the lower level of the market. Once that supply and demand curve comes back into order, those tenants get a better product from their landlord. They get a remodeled unit, and they get a unit at market rates. That's what Santa Barbara, in my opinion, that's what Santa Barbara needs, is rentals in the mid-level that are affordable. And there's no way to get there unless you add projects like this. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Matt Wilker, and followed by Denise Adams.
Hello, I'm Matt Walker. I'm a 24-year Santa Barbara resident, and I'm president of a company, Lowell. We employ about 75 people. Been in business a little over 6 years. We've created some jobs in town. Housing is a big problem for employees. We have UCSB, which is a great resource. We can find great people there. We can bring them in. We as an employer and a job creator here are competing against areas that actually have lower cost housing, particularly the greater LA area, where people are looking at competition. We find we tend to have to offer even higher salaries to UCSB students coming out, perhaps than they get down in LA. So I support this project because the housing shortage impacts us as employers. People go to Ventura because it's cheaper. It really then impacts the employer because they have that terrible commute, they have traffic, they're going to have to work remotely. So as an employer, I support this project. This is exactly the kind of housing we need. It would benefit our employees as well as other employers as well. It benefit their employees.
Thank you. Denise Adams, followed by Rick Clausen.
Good afternoon. My name's Denise Adams, and I'm here representing Montecito del Vista. We're off Barker Pass Road above Milpas and APS. Our concern with the city of Santa Barbara, of which part of our development's in the city, part of it's in the county, is safety, evacuation routes, and the fact that the city and the Planning Commission of the city refuses to address infrastructure improvements that are needed, street widening, interchanges, sidewalk widening. People cannot get to Santa Barbara High School, Santa Barbara Junior High, and those evacuation routes are all going to be blocked. Milpas is already over-impacted. No one is addressing the need for parking there. The county bowl takes a high school parking lot, and at the end of the school year, when it's time for banquets and award ceremonies, we can't even use the high school parking now. And it's going to get worse. And so our position is not so much against the project, but it needs to come after the city does adequate planning to ensure that there's infrastructure from the roads, the sidewalks, evacuation, and safety. And we'd like to put you all on notice if, in fact, there's a fire and we can't get down that hill, because if you look at Gutierrez from APS going down, it already will only hold one car, and you must address the parking issue, the off-street parking, and you can't make all of our streets a parking lot. And that's what's happening with all these projects. And Milpas is going to change the whole character of our community on the east side forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Clausen.
Is your last one?
Yes.
Thankfully, yes. My name is Rick Clausen, and I wasn't going to speak today, but a couple of comments that were made earlier by the applicant and supporters changed my mind. One has to do with the available housing in the city and how this will add to that. I think, though, that recently the city has added or has converted rental apartments to short-term rentals, which it takes some of the apartment, the living apartments that would go to workforce people. The other point that I wanted to make was an earlier comment from the architect who made a smooth plea to maintain the high ceilings in the building and presumably plate height, which just contribute to the overall height of the building. And that is a major point of contention for the public, is the overall height of the building. And the justification was to make the small living spaces more livable with 9-foot window heights for light. Well, I think that the livability of the apartment translates to its rental attractiveness and the economic viability of this project, and I don't think that those should be considerations for this board. It's the Architectural Board of Review, not the economic viability of the project board. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. Is there anyone that we've missed? Yes, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Will Harriman. I started at UCSB about 10 years ago, and now I'm working professionally here at Procore in Carpinteria. And it's really challenging for me seeing all of my friends and people leave Santa Barbara for other cities for jobs because they can't find contemporary housing for young professionals in Santa Barbara. It's really ideal to live downtown. That's where young people want to be, and we can't find any housing to do that. It's hard for Procore to recruit people because there isn't housing in Santa Barbara that's ideal for the young town and the young people in the town, and it makes me worried about raising a family here because my kids won't have a contemporary apartment to live in because I can't even afford housing right now. If I can't afford housing, I'm going to be renting for a while. One day I might own a house, then I'll have kids. Where are my kids going to live? They're not going to be able to buy a house. They need contemporary apartments to live in themselves. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, then we have some written comments. From Kellum DeForest. Addressing today's plans, I hope the applicant has lowered the building by 3 feet by reducing the plate heights and has provided more Art Deco elements. Consider moving the elevator tower to the north side to provide a less obtrusive and less bulky Cannon Perdido street facade. The tower on the southwest corner appears to be tacked on. And from Daniel Hedden. I'm a third-generation native to Santa Barbara, alumni of Santa Barbara High, and have just returned to the area after finishing a degree at Cal Poly. Myself, along with many of my peers, are finding this transition back home to be difficult. While there seems to be no shortage of jobs, it is very apparent there's a shortage of housing. I was thrilled to hear about this project, as I saw it as an opportunity for the community to come together in an area long overdue for revitalization. If this project will provide housing for the working class community and bring life to a new area of town, I don't see what there is to object. After listening to the last hearing, I feel there has been an adequate review on the exterior of the project. However, the interiors and livability should also be considerable of considerable importance, as a small living space combined with lower ceilings and less natural light could cause inhabitants to feel confined and uncomfortable. I feel this project has taken the right steps, even gone the extra yards to make certain Santa Barbara building criteria has been met. All this being said, I hope the Architectural Board will consider the positive impact this project will have on the lives of those in need of a home, and particularly the postgraduate and entry-level working community like myself. On behalf of this community, I strongly recommend the ABR approve this project. That's Daniel Hedden. And then we have some other letters. The first is from Christos Selmeister. I'll let Amy tackle that one.
You want me to read the whole thing, or?
I don't know. I haven't read it. So
Maybe
this is in
the interest of time.
Support or
not.
Okay, so the first letter was in support of the project from someone who grew up here and went to high school in Santa Barbara, and still has family within this neighborhood. A letter from Anna Marie Gott, not in favor of the project, agreeing that 2-story units would be more appropriate, and believe the parking impacts of the project are not being studied properly. And from Natalia Govani, not in favor of the project due to mass, bulk, and scale.
All right, thank you. These can all go to Matthew. All right, so we're going to close public comment and go to questions from the board. And can we start with David, please?
Sure. Excuse me. Were any of the plate heights dropped at all? I know you raised up a little bit on the parapets, but did you drop any plate heights?
No.
Okay. And in your presentation, you were saying it's leaning towards Art Deco, but it's not necessarily characterized as maybe an true Art Deco style. If you could, in your own words, maybe describe how you would best define the style then?
Well, I think it's an eclectic building in the sense that it's meant to be a modern building with simple massing forms articulated and modulated in the way that you see it there, and using some of the Art Deco vocabulary, especially in the tower and in some of the parapet elements and the handrails, I guess I'm not sure the exact expression I would use, but to, as we have said, kind of give a nod to the Art Deco style, which exists in a building immediately adjacent to this one that was kind of part of the inspiration for this.
And part of the dairy that had been
And the dairy.
originally in that neighborhood.
Right.
But a full-blown Art Deco design really, we didn't think would be appropriate in this neighborhood. You don't see a lot of that in town, but like Debbie mentioned, there's some subtle references to it throughout town, like at the post office and at the building that's on the corner here that was part of the dairy.
I think the anti-Art Deco building you might have noticed would be the hotel at the corner of Hollister and Stork that's just been being completed now. That, to me, is not what we would want to do here.
Yeah.
So, if that helps. I think it's successful. The elements that are incorporated, work together. I think you can see it in the renderings.
And then you had mentioned in your presentation there was a unit on one of the corners that was popped off.
Yes.
Do you mind showing me on the elevations where that
Sure.
happens?
You're looking at.
You should
Do
do it
on
over
that one,
here.
please.
Let's go to the elevation sheet.
It's probably way deep, Debbie. Isn't it? A little deeper?
Yeah. Let's go to the color.
Color one.
So, if you look at the Philinda elevation, as part of our process after that initial and some of the earlier meetings, first of all, we dropped this element to be a 2-story element at this end, close to the corner at Canna Perdido, and that's a roof deck now for the residents to enjoy. And then we separated the buildings by creating this gap that you can actually see right through the sky on the other side, and then have another 3-story element here, but then at the corner we took off what would have been a unit over that corner there.
Thank you.
And I
No.
think you can, well, I don't think any of the renderings show it clearly. but-
Thank you. No further questions.
The only question I was going to ask was for the parking. So basically you're in the unit count, so you have 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and studio units. And
Yes.
then each unit has its own parking spot.
Correct.
And then how many parking spots are you adding, like, on the street?
So we have one additional space in the parking garage.
So yeah, we have 51
51,
spaces.
and you're required to have 50.
And we're adding about 5 or 6 more parking spaces on the street because there's some commercial painted parking areas in front of that, what was formerly a commercial building. And then also we're closing driveways along the Fulinda side. And yeah, so I worked with Public Works and they indicated that was about 5 to 6 additional spaces.
Okay.
We're considering exploring, getting a car share.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the block there, or possibly even using the 51st space in the building if we can work that out.
But it seems like it would be an ideal location, where the city to expand its car share program because they're putting car share in the public right of way. This would be an area where we're creating new parking and it'd probably be a neighborhood that could utilize that.
Mhm.
So we'll be working with Rob Dayton to see if we can't get that expanded here.
And then generally the tallest portion is the 36 feet
Well,
that.
Now that we've raised a couple of those parapets, generally the parapets are 36 feet, but we raised a couple of
Like
the
in the
parapets in
center
a couple of places
Right,
there.
to get the variation that
Right.
we were commenting on.
Right, exactly. They go up about a foot and a half.
I just wanted to say something about the cow-calf thing. That I understand that comment, but the reason we had shown that is because it was a comment that had been made by Sheila Lodge.
Yeah, I was just reading that.
Yeah, so that's why the measurement was from there.
Then I think the last, I had one more that I'm forgetting. I'm going to try to remember what it was. I was just going to
Sure,
ask.
we can come back to you,
Yeah.
Howard.
So I have a question. When you study setting the building back with the structural consequences and the load paths and so forth, what is it that determines the distance that you set the building back with all those loads?
Right, there are a lot of factors, and it's not so much the loads because we're doing a concrete podium structure that will be designed basically to carry the loads wherever they occur. What determines is that we have that central courtyard, and there's kind of what we think is kind of a minimal distance between the units within that courtyard that we want to maintain. So that, it's all those things kind of working together to try and find what's the sweet spot where we can set that second story back, in this case, 5 feet. That allows the double-loaded corridor in those units to still create some decent courtyard space within the units. And I think those are about 18, 19 feet apart, facing one another.
So
Really
these setbacks, are those usable spaces? Do they create decks and balconies?
Well, that interestingly, in our original proposal, we did not have balconies. But as a result of one of the members of the ABR saying, well, you ought to have some private balconies and things, we were able to add private balconies. And you can see them. Let's put the rendering sheet up so you can see them in the rendering. You can see the private balconies there. And what happens is those project back out, those elements that incorporate the balconies are projected out about a foot beyond the first floor of the building. And they create, a covered balcony space on the second floor. But on the third floor, it's not covered except with that canopy. On the ground floor, they're not covered, but they're recessed by about a foot or so to create a little bit of weather covering because we're projecting them out beyond the face of that
But we
building.
do have patios and balconies for, I believe, every unit.
Well, we
It's
have.
either a Juliet balcony.
Right.
Of some form, even on the interior courtyard area, or there's a patio. So every unit, there's an attempt to kind of bring the outdoors in for people because they're living in a smaller unit.
So the other thing is, when you get into the routing of infrastructure, the plumbing and all that, ducting. Are you able to use the spaces above closets and hallways to run horizontally rather than having to take them, consume vertical space by running them underneath joists?
Right, wherever possible, of course, we try to do that. It isn't always possible, so in some cases we, in the main living spaces, we generally like to keep the ceiling, as tall as possible, but if we have to, we can route some of that infrastructure into drops, and in some cases, if we have like a fan coil unit or something like that, we might drop that over a space somewhere. The garage in particular has a lot of infrastructure in it. And I don't know how familiar you are with that type of construction, Howard, but I can walk you over to a project where we have a parking structure, and you can see all the piping and ducting that has to happen in that garage space. You simply have to have the clearance because we need to have that 8'2" clear for handicap accessibility to parking and all that.
So in these plans, we aren't looking at any stacked parking?
No.
And
that as a result of
okay,
the planning
and these plans, the plate-to-plate, floor-to-floor heights are unchanged?
Right, from the last meeting that we had, correct.
We talked about it in great detail
Oh,
with
yeah,
the,
yeah.
with the clients.
We want to be respectful of the desire to do that, but you come back to this idea that a 36-foot building is not a tall building, and the quality of the space, and we have actually our newly renovated offices have spaces in them that are somewhat similar with the 9-foot tall glass, and you can really see the difference that makes, especially when you're living in a fairly intense urban setting, to have that additional light and sense of spaciousness is just really important. I think it's a really great feature of the building, and if we can achieve it, we really want to do that. And we don't think that we're really compromising, especially, you go back to the Planning Commission, it was discussed there, and they were comfortable with 38 feet. But then when we discussed the parking issue, about whether or not we needed to provide stacked parking, we introduced the idea that there was an opportunity to lower the height a little bit if that was no longer a part of our project description to have stacked parking. So we were able to lower the building. And
2 feet.
Yeah, 2 feet at that point.
And how do you determine that 10-foot ceiling height is livable and a 9-foot ceiling height is not livable?
9-foot ceiling heights are just not livable, Howard. I mean, I just can't tell you. No, seriously speaking, it's not.
May I address that?
Sure, absolutely.
So we develop apartment. By the way, I was born and raised here. I have 2 daughters, both of which went to Santa Barbara High School, and we deal with units on a regular basis and what people want and so forth. We have reduced these in size to approximately 200 square feet smaller than what is considered average. So average studio is approximately 600 feet. These are 400 feet. An average 2-bedroom unit is 1,000 feet. These are 800 feet. The standard plate height for an apartment for the last 20 years is 9 feet. As a matter of fact, there are units that were built in the late 40s in downtown Santa Barbara that have 9-foot plate heights. But they are larger units. All that we have left in this project at this point is to bring in some amount of natural light, more than ordinary, to offset the fact that the footprints are so much smaller than normal. It's what you see in Europe. They take the windows up higher, they bring in more natural light to offset the fact that the space is a small space. But that's all we have left. We have 9-foot windows purposefully to accomplish this. If we push that ceiling down any further, we're going to just put the squeeze on the windows, which is going to reduce the amount of light, which is going to diminish the livability. The idea is to create housing, livable housing for people. Now, whether this building, and by the way, there are adjacencies on all sides of us that are easily 35 feet. Furthermore, this project is in somewhat of a hole. We've gone through 6 hearings now.
Okay,
The first 4 hearings were things. But the point is this. to make them attractive and livable for the inhabitants, 10 foot is essential. And by the way, 10 foot is really not what it'll be because we have 18-inch scissor trusses between floors. We have to put in resilient channel for sound, 2 sheets of 5/8 drywall. Up above, we have to put in decking, and we have to put in lightweight concrete and other sound insulation. So by the time you really net out the floors, it's going to be something more closer to 9'6".
Okay.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not going to be
Yeah.
a full 10
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
Other questions?
No more questions.
Yeah, he's very passionate about it. He does.
Thanks for
yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I remembered my one.
Okay.
Just to clarify, you aren't asking for any modifications in this project?
No.
Right, okay.
This normally comes later, but just want to get it on the floor today. What's the window type you're going to use? Door and windows, because that's an important feature here.
That's a very good question. We haven't really fully addressed that, but I believe we're going to be going with aluminum windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
bronze aluminum windows.
Okay. And it looks like the typical wall thicknesses on the exterior are 2x6.
Yes.
So we'll have the,
windows back in recessing.
okay, all right. All right, those are my questions. So we're into comments, and I think I'll start by reading the comments from Phil Sudine, who's a landscape architect for the Landmarks Commission. Since we don't have a landscape architect on our board, we asked him to do a courtesy review. And his comments were as follows. The introduction of street trees in this neighborhood is appreciated. Continue to coordinate with the urban forest superintendent. There should be more skyline trees used on the project where the plant material can be located in the earth. Use skyline trees that will reach over 50 feet and have considerable biomass at maturity, not palms. Correct the rendered elevations, sheet A20, with respect to the shown landscape. This was the previous set.
Oh, yeah.
So must have been one of the renderings.
Right, we did try to coordinate those.
Okay, it appears that the outdoor kitchen, barbecue, fire table at the second floor is not located approximately 20 feet from the property line shared by single-family residents on the North Nopal Street on this project. This is an adverse impact to the North Nopal Street single-family residences.
That's
I think that's incorrect, actually.
Okay.
We can show that.
Can we look at that?
Yeah.
Outdoor kitchen, BBQ.
Put it on the landscape plan, right?
Well, the dimensions will be on our
Site plan?
I guess it's right here, you can see it. First of all, there's a 20-foot easement there that goes up to this line. So that's
Right.
20 feet. This is a planter. Our
kitchen is.
Yeah, I think we need to look at the landscape plan to see it, but our kitchen
Barbecue area is right
barbecue
there.
area is right there.
And the property line's out here.
Yeah,
So we don't have it.
that scale.
At least
but-
20
Were you
feet.
looking this dimension?
No, this is a planter here on the second. This is a bike
Bubble.
shed here,
Yeah.
and then on the roof is planting, and then the barbecue stuff is here.
Yeah, because to
So
here
here-
it says 12.7.
And it should be to 20 to here.
See if there's a site plan that shows that a little bit better.
You know what? That's probably on the It's just on the landscape plan. I'll show you. Okay.
Number 10. It's integrated into that,
Yeah.
which actually makes it closer than 20 feet. So we'll change
Can
that.
address that, yeah.
Okay. All right, comments, David.
First, I think you guys have done a lot of work on the architecture. I think the little features you guys have added, there's a lot of detail that's been considered, and I think it's starting to be really effective in terms of softening these edges, the point up of the parapets, to get some more articulation going on. The railings, I think the details are really nice. So it's starting to read less as an artificial project and specific to itself now. I still struggle with it being specific to the area. I think there's still an issue of compatibility for me. The plate height thing, I understand. The units too, they are small. I'm not opposed to the number of units or the parking. I think you guys are providing one spot more than you need to, and you're providing 5 or 6 more spots off-site. That's not the case usually. So in terms of program, I don't have any issues with it. I think, at the end of the day, this does have to be an economic project. Any project does, that's reality, or it's not going to get built. But it also has to be married hand in hand with, I think, the surrounding neighborhood. And so for me, when I see a reference, back to the armory, this isn't an armory, this is a mixed-use building. And so I think the issues of it providing the same attempt at kind of bulk as an armory, or even this point on top of a cow, that cow is not occupying the frontage that this is. So it's a difference of scale there. I think that it doesn't work for me still, is that height, it is what it is. But the articulation, I think, on the facade in terms of plan, it starts to work in some places, but on Felinda, it's still very flat. It's going up 3 feet. And so that lack of articulation there on 3 stories of facade, that's where it becomes problematic for me. So I don't see that context to the bungalows on Clifford. Even the picture you guys showed with, I think, the Habitat housing, it's 3 stories, but it's got a gable roof and it steps back. So that 3-story element's not at frontage. This building is that. So I think overall, it still reads as one big unit. There's not enough articulation of the massing to divide up the structure to make it start to read as smaller in scale, which I think would help tie it into the community. So for me, it's not, it's still just not compatible in that aspect. Plate height is fine with me. That is what it is. Unit counts, parking, those are all fine. The architecture itself, I think the quality's there. But yeah, that compatibility issue is kind of what hurts, I think, especially when you look at something on the floor plan on Felinda Avenue. There's I think it's A1 or A2 would work. Up on the north side, that'll work on that sheet. Up on the north side, there's a 15-foot opening between those buildings right where your hand is right there, and that overall frontage is about 160 feet. That's, comparatively speaking, that's not a lot of openness. So these people that are on other parts of the property, even on this elevation, there's not any openness that's happening through that massing. So these people are losing specific views and sight lines of the sky that were there before. That's where it starts to, I think, not work for me. So that's the issue I have still, is kind of that pushing and pulling that's not happening still in terms of facade. Even though you guys have pushed back, it's still uniform. So it's the context of, I think, bulk and scale that are still problematic for me. But quality, architecture, design, units, parking, those aspects work.
Okay. Amy.
I definitely appreciate the amount of work that you've done between the last review and this review. And I think during the last review, there are some, like this elevation that you started with was definitely the first, I forget what page it's on in here, but seeing, so when we looked at this the last time, is kind of what threw off, because we have been looking, this has been we've looked at this project a lot, and it has gone through many iterations. I think you guys have been trying to kind of work with the comments that we've been giving you. So when we looked at this the last time, just the comparison between the project and...
Could center it more into the camera so they can see what we're talking about.
Between this building and this building, just the massiveness of that. And knowing and actually looking back and seeing that it actually has the same height call out, or actually it's a little lower now. This one's still the same, just for reference. So taking that into consideration, taking this too, that was something also. And looking at where you are now, I think that it's definitely, I'm looking at it a lot differently, actually seeing it in proportion with the buildings around it. And I think that even looking at this view, because this definitely, as far as, say, a view of the Riviera, you're still getting that up and above the building. And if this was made at the 38 feet, you're actually going to still see more of the hill. So I think
What do you mean, 38 feet?
Well, this.
There was a comment that this was from Planning Commission.
Yes.
And that they had proposed at 38 feet, but right now we're at 36.
I see.
It's actually 2 feet lower.
Lower than what we're
what's
seeing here. And I think this, driving or even walking on the other side of the street gives you that view. So I think this is really helpful for me. And if we can go to the elevations. I think that the added detail that you've added, I think losing or moving the unit that was closer to the residential, to the houses, I think that was successful. And I think lightening this up really helps kind of break the building as you're looking at the project. And then, I mean, as far as the program, I think the mix of the studio 1-2 bedroom is really appropriate. And having the smaller size, I think it works for this area. Just speaking from experience in living in a very, consistently living in small spaces. Light is important, and I think given the fact that architecturally looking at the elevations, you still have enough mass between the windows, even having large openings, because sometimes if they are going to get too close, it kind of cuts down on the overall just mass around the openings. And just kind of further looking back at the Planning Commission comments, and that we're not looking at any modifications here, which we've seen a lot of projects that are larger looking for modifications, and just their kind of support for the development in this area. So I think this process, you've definitely done a lot of good adjustments.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Howard.
Well, I agree with David's and Amy's comments. I also think that your styling and the detailing of the project to be more Art Deco is very successful. I like these fins. I like these little brackets. I think the elevator tower has been made more vertical, more graceful, and it is eclectic, but I think it's a nice combination. There's just one point of departure for me, and that is in this continuum between building height and floor area and what's called livable. I don't agree with your idea of livability. If you're going to make, I think, for example, living in 400 square feet is unlivable. That's an area. If you think that by making a 400 square foot floor area 10 feet high makes it livable, I would question that. I think, for example, if you must have 10 feet to have your livability, then I say push the third floor back, not just 5 feet to give some sort of artificial open space. Push it back an entire unit. Push it back to the walls where the bathrooms are. And I say use the bathrooms and the spaces above closets and bathrooms and hallways for your infrastructure so that you get the top floor moved back from the street. That is this wall, 3-story wall at the street. Even though you break it up with covered balconies and so forth, decks and balconies, still is a wall. And I think it's, if you want to be at the street, then I would say reduce the plate height. If you want to keep it 10 feet, then move your third floor, your top floors, or some of your, at least a portion of your top floor back from that edge, to give a more three-dimensional breakup of the mass of the building. It is improved. Don't think that I don't like this project. I just think that you're playing with a size, bulk, scale issue that is going to set a precedent. And that's how I feel about that. And I'm passionate too.
Okay. Well, I think I fall on the side of Amy. I appreciate the work that you've done since the last review. Planning Commission found the height acceptable. We found the height acceptable. Before you went to Planning Commission, we had you push and pull. We had you move things around, break things up. And then you came back. And so to me, it's not only what you've done has created a building with character, and as long as that detailing holds through into the working drawings, I think it'll be a very nice building, and I think it'll be an appreciated part of the Santa Barbara landscape. So it looks like we have a split board, is the way I see it right now. Two board members would like you to either bring the plate heights down or to re-articulate the massing. Two board members feel like you've done your job and it's a nice building. So I'm not sure where we're going to go with that.
Well, may I just...
one brief comment, Diddy?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I don't really see where there's any opportunity here to re-articulate, move the mass further inbound or anything like that. I just don't see that happening. The plate heights, that's something that will have to be determined by the client. But if we can't make a decision today, then let's come back the next meeting. And
can I point out one thing? Like we're talking about Felinda here as
Yes,
like
that's
there's
it.
mass of 3-story, but we really only have 2 sections that are 3-story out of the full extent of the street frontage.
And they're facing an industrial building across the street,
Right.
Yeah.
which is part of the thinking.
Also quite a bit. I don't know if
I
it's
mean,
really.
it's hard to tell. I mean, you can
But we
kind of-
we've studied the building. We're
Yeah.
all architects. We understand that.
Yeah.
We understand that.
There's
So-
a lot of modulation in this building now that we went to great lengths to create.
So any board members feel like they, well, let me ask the applicant a question. How difficult would it be, and I'd like to hear comments from board members whether they feel like this would be an adequate step in the direction that they're looking for. But if you, say, took the most impactful and visible side of the building and lowered it by 2 feet. So you took a foot out of the plate height for this and this. And I know that's going to affect the sides to some degree as well. But if you just brought that down another 2 feet, is that something you see as being feasible?
I guess it's something
No.
we have to discuss.
Yeah, it creates a lot of ramping, doesn't it?
If you look at it practically, we're at 12 feet plus 10 feet plus 10 feet, and we're not even going to have that. And if you get that, you get to 32 feet. If you have any in between the units, our parapets are barely. If you push this thing down 2 feet, we're just.
I'm just saying this one side. I'm just throwing out an idea.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
It's
But
just
I
an
don't
idea
think
to come to a compromise here. And we also have the community who's looking for, some relief in terms of the height and mass of the building. So I think that addresses some of the community concerns.
You'll never notice 2 feet from the street,
But-
ever.
Okay.
Yes, Amy.
Just on your point, Howard, for the plate-to-plate, because if we had 10-foot plate heights, you're only going to...
10-foot ceiling heights.
No, I thought it was
We don't
plate
have
heights.
10-foot ceilings, because
So
we have an
it-
inch and a half.
So, yeah, so it's,
plus 3
so
inches
it's a
above.
10-foot plate height, right?
It's 11 and a half, isn't it? Isn't it total floor to floor? Floor to floor.
What is floor to floor?
The floor to the upper, the top of the deck of the next level up. But then on the deck, we have an inch and a half of lightweight concrete. And
We
then
saw-
we have,
So let's see this.
It must be on one of the drawings.
Where are the
Is it on one of the
sections?
drawings today?
Do you have the sections
15 feet?
15 floor to floor.
that would
15
tell
feet.
us what the floor-to-floor height is?
That's the lower floor.
That's the first floor.
That's the first floor.
That's because
Now, one
for the
thing-
parking. For the parking. All I was just going to make a comment on what the actual ceiling height is, because I think I'm hearing,
Oh, wait a second.
10-foot ceiling and a 15-inch ceiling.
Rather than debate this, I'd like to see what the proposed floor-to-floor height is.
But we saw it last time, it was on the drawings last time. Matthew, can you help us with that?
On these elevations, here you go.
Okay, okay, we got it.
That's 10 feet.
7, 3, 4 to
So this is level 2, 12,
It's level 3.
and level 3 is from 12 to 23, 3, which is 11.
Saying to you, Howard, is that there's 10 feet from the top of the deck to the top of the plate. And then there's a 1 foot 3 that we've allowed for the joist space with the
Yeah.
deck. But on top of the deck, we got 1.5 inches of lightweight concrete, and then we have some, sound proofing with 2 layers of drywall and resilient channels.
Oh, the ceiling height ends up being,
Probably
10
closer
feet.
to 9'7", approximately.
yeah.
9'7", 9'8".
So all of your description of what about the floors and all that, that is to be enjoyed by the occupants. What I'm looking at is the cumulative height as enjoyed by the public from the street right away.
Enjoyed is the right word.
So how do 2 other board members feel about the idea that I threw out? Would that address their concerns or not? Because I don't want to have them do something that's not going to be sufficient.
David, you're shaking your head.
It wouldn't for me. I mean, like 2 feet across the board is still 2 feet across a large building. It's
Modulation.
there's modulation that I think is missing. So there's these facades that are just taking up a very big amount of space. The 2 feet is going to compress, and I don't think it's worth the effort.
Okay, I'm just going to remind board members that this is the 5th review, okay? And we did have several opportunities, lengthy meetings to comment, to ask for adjustments, to look for changes in the massing. And as we know, the responsible thing to do is in the first 2 or 3 meetings is to get our viewpoints out there. So, after all this work has been done and the time has passed, to now come back and say, the massing's not working, it needs to be re-articulated, it's just irresponsible. That's my
I think
view.
it's been expressed since the beginning, though, by several board members, and it's not a majority view. That's why the motions aren't really
It's
reflecting
been
that,
it's been consistently expressed in the last 2 meetings.
I've
And
been
and there's been, this is the 5th meeting, okay? So anyway, that's my viewpoint. I think it's irresponsible at this point to be saying the massing needs to be readjusted.
Well,
So
Chairman Perdine, the site
yes,
section
go
wasn't
ahead,
provided.
David.
The site section was provided at the last meeting, even though we asked for that prior to that. There's been movements to the massing that have been added throughout the elevation, so we've never looked at a complete massing for 2 or 3 meetings.
We saw 3D renderings. We've seen 3D renderings every time.
And elements have been added consistently to these drawings every time.
Okay, so that's your reason why you feel you can go and ask for massing changes at this point. I don't think it's responsible.
Well, you're welcome to take a vote if you want.
Well, you're welcome to make a motion. So we need a motion is what we need.
I guess I could take a stab at a motion. I mean, my motion would be project design approval with the following comments that the landscape comments, I don't know if I need to reread those, but that the landscape comments be addressed, specifically just in general, all of the landscape comments, that the applicant return with just further detailing of the project. We have the beginning of the railing and the canopy, but just the standard final review details. Materials board. That would be my.
A second.
Can we, sorry, Mr. Chair, could we ensure that the information that was provided to this board in the form of a staff memo makes it into the motion?
Sure, that the board received the staff memo highlighting the planning commission meeting minutes from March 16th. Is that the staff memo that you're? Okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I just wanted to make sure your action includes the conditions of approval that staff has recommended. Those are important to this project in particular, and also the CEQA determination.
All right.
Can I see that staff thing here?
Take a look at, I highlighted some portions of the Planning Commission. So that the ABR finds that the project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under CEQA guideline section 15183, based on the city staff analysis and the CEQA certificate of determination for filing of this project. That the board has reviewed the proposed project. This is what the compatibility. Which?
So the CEQA part, which you just mentioned, and then the second is the conditions of approval. So the attachment to your memo is the last attachment. Number 3 is the conditions of approval. One of the main points would be that this would be a covenant is recorded that keeps this at rental housing, because this is a priority housing overlay project. Also the AUD survey, there's some site remediation required, and discovery of any archaeological resources condition, and then also a couple construction hours and contact signs and such, because it is a larger project and would have a longer than normal construction period than a small house. So you just want to have those conditions of approval in there. Did you find those?
Yes. And that, do you want me to read each one out, or just the?
No, just that you would accept the conditions that were provided to you in the memo.
Sure. The conditions of approval that essentially highlight the approved development, landscape plan compliance, that prior to a building permit, the applicant shall submit the following for rental housing, AUD survey, owner agreement, and that the following conditions shall be reproduced on grading and construction plans as far as the unanticipated archaeological resources, contractor notification, construction implementation requirements, construction contact sign, construction hours, and construction storing and staging, and then the air quality and dust control. And just that overall the board appreciates all of the work that's gone into this project and has also read through the Planning Commission meeting minutes. And Kirk seconded, so all in favor? Aye.
Hold on, let's make sure we got,
Do we get everything?
covered it all. All right, so, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
2 opposed.
All right.
So one of you guys needs to make a motion, a counter motion.
Well, we're going to be basically gridlocked.
I mean, one thing just to comment on the unit sizes. 400 square feet is small, but it's feasible, especially in a town that rents are very expensive. And I think that the space they're allowing, the light from the windows does actually make it feasible. And
Right.
again, just speaking from direct experience in living similar situations, it's.
In my experience, I stay in, whenever I go to San Francisco, I stay in a Art Nouveau, Art Deco hotel, boutique hotel, and the total square footage of the room and the bathroom and the closets and so forth is about 350 square feet, and they have 10-foot ceilings. And I feel like it's extremely livable. I'm really happy for 3 days and nights. It is as a 24/7, 365 home, it doesn't work.
Well,
Okay,
It's
we
not
need
livable.
another, we
Can
need a
I-
motion.
can I make-
No, let's not get into an argument.
Can I make
That's
an
not-
offer
That's
here?
not where we're at.
May I
We're-
make an
we
offer?
need,
Offer.
You have
I have an offer.
Yes.
Offer.
Yes. Look, does it involve money?
Yes. You know, talking to the client, obviously you get a sense of how important. It's important enough to them that, you know, we would walk away from this meeting and say, we'll just come back another month of delay. But we'd prefer to get this thing done. And I think we can lower the building by 1 foot by, you know, lowering the plates and exploring, you know, every option that we have available to do that. And if that makes it happen, you know, if we can get Howard's support and David's support for the project, we'd like to just kind of move on, you know, in the spirit of compromise. So
That's your offer?
that's my offer.
So I have a counteroffer. Whatever it takes for you to do your structure, slabs and insulation and all the little layers and so forth, add 9 feet to that for a clear plate height of 9 feet. That would be my counteroffer. It's 10 foot and 9 foot, 8 foot, whatever it is. It seems just really, this is what happened with Chapala 1. They squeezed it like this and it went up like that. It's just the same story all over again, all about market-driven rates, prices. There's nothing wrong with it, except don't take it away from the community's view of the mountains, from the streets.
That means the windows go down. So then
That's
everything
okay.
gets squashed down, and the guy that lives there lives a poor quality, and you said it yourself, the 10-foot
You know, I'm
ceilings
sorry
made
to
the
say, but
difference.
8-foot-high windows glazing is not poor quality. 8-foot-high is a generous height for a sliding sash or for a window, in my opinion. And I've done a lot of homes, expensive homes with those dimensions in mind. So it's, you know, I don't think that makes it unlivable.
Yeah,
So
make
Chairman
a
Grady,
counter
to make
offer,
it-
your counter, okay? Because it is so important to, I think we might be able to lower the building by 1.5 feet if I really work at it with the parking structure where it's really critical to make sure there's enough height to make everything work. If that does the trick, then, you know, we can study that and see if it works.
So I would say, rather than pinning it to a number, let's just say we'd like to continue this for the applicant to study reducing the height of the building.
I would posit that that's too vague at this point.
We're coming back.
Right.
When we have a.
It's too vague.
Chairman Grady, can I speak?
Yes, David.
Okay, so at least for me, I think changing plate heights is there's a lot of undertaking there, and it can go a lot of different ways. I agree probably with the other board members who are in your favor that going that route is probably a little heartening for one and disingenuous at this point. But overall, when I see these elevations, this wedding cake that you referred to, there's a big one in Rome, pretty famous one. It completely steps back, though. If you're able to articulate on facade stronger articulations than what's going on right now, and possibly dropping not continuously every unit down to 9 feet or 9.6. Hold on, let me just go through it.
The elevation.
I'm looking at all 4 of them. So if there's a way to articulate some and not others, there's a way to articulate over some spaces and not others. There's a way to fold back, like Board Member Wittosh proposed, to make a unit larger to get more open space, so units are starting to pop off a little bit. But the overall facades right now, it's still just, they read as one unit. So you have, every elevation reads as one entire building, and I think that's not in character with the surrounding area. I just don't see that. If you're not doing different material to break up these buildings to start reading differently, or breaking up roof lines dramatically by 3 and 5 feet, then it has to happen in facade, and that's not happening right now yet. So that's my issue. I'm not going to ask to reduce all the plate heights uniformly, but if there's ways to do that a couple times, but there's more gestures happening on facade, I think that's
That doesn't
effective.
sound, I'm sorry to interrupt, David, but that doesn't sound like a compromise at this point.
I didn't say it was. I was just saying this
Okay,
is my
well, we're
position
looking for a
on it.
compromise. We're not looking for your position or Howard's position. We're looking for a
Well,
compromise.
that's our counter, though. So I think if I was going to submit a motion,
You're
it would
asking
probably-
for a redesign. What I heard is a redesign.
If I submitted a motion, that's how it would read, and it would probably fail because it would be a 2-2 still.
I don't think you have any support there.
Then it would be 1-3, but that would be my
But
position
but
still.
does it help us finish and complete this meeting?
Not at all, but
Okay,
it's getting
been-
clarity of where I'm standing on this, so that's...
David,
if I
that's
submit
enough,
that.
okay? It's enough.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's enough. I'm the chairperson, and I say who can speak and when it's time for someone to speak, and I think you've said enough.
Noted.
We're trying to, we need solutions at this point, okay? We need a compromise. You know what the applicant is looking for? To ask them to redesign the building at this point is not an option.
So,
what I said.
If they took it down a foot, so 6 inches out of each top floor.
Each of
knowing-
the 2 floors?
Well, knowing that the bottom floor is the parking, would that,
Okay, just to summarize, I'm okay with the podium. I'm okay with the height of that. That has to be.
okay.
It's the 2 stories on top.
Right, so that's
that
what I was
that
just
I have
saying,
a problem
if
with.
we give them specific direction on that.
As I said, I would be amenable to 9-foot clear ceiling height, plus the structure and all the thicknesses that they have to have for slabs and insulation and
9-foot
all the
ceiling
rest.
height.
9-foot clear.
So it has to be that, because I'm thinking.
Well, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
yeah, I
If
mean-
we took the 6 out and the 6 out, that means, because we were basically saying that it was going to be 9-7, right? When everything was said and done.
How about
interior.
9-6 clear? How about 9-6 clear?
Yeah, so when we do the 6 inches and 6 inches out, you still have that layering, so that comes down
We can keep the windows that way.
9.4 or 5 or something like that.
Right.
Is what it comes down to, and I'm wondering if that's okay with you. I mean, it's like we're talking about this much, right?
Is that really going to make a
Last,
difference?
I know.
yeah, it makes a difference to me.
This much?
The last,
No,
the
but
last
yeah,
meeting,
yeah, we hear you. But,
last meeting I said it should be reduced in
No, I
height by
know.
3 feet.
yeah.
And I was looking at numbers on in the tabulation on at the section. And I just think that with the present footprint of the building, which is, again, doesn't have the modulation that Mr. Watkins is talking about, I'll compromise on the modulation, but not on the height. Or I'll compromise on the height if there's more modulation. It's one or the other.
I think we're kind of at an impasse.
So I get,
I don't know what else to say. We're offering to lower the building with a 9'6" clear, ceiling height in the units. And, there are different ways we can achieve that. Maybe we can use a different structural member, I don't know. But if that doesn't work for you, Howard, I don't know what to tell you. We'll just have to come back in in 2 weeks or whatever, present the project again when you have a fuller board and take it from there. I mean, it's just not fair, this whole thing of, new board members.
so is that not enough?
I think 9'6" is just, no.
All right.
Seriously, you're telling me that 9'6"
No.
is too
I mean,
much?
I'm trying to be honest.
Right, you're
Yeah,
trying to
that's-
be honest, I hear you.
Well, it's all about providing housing, and we're arguing about 6 inches and a ceiling for the quality of life of the people that have to live there. And it is about the people that have to live there.
You yourself said you love that 10-foot space. Yeah, and people who live in a small studio will love it as well.
In my book, I would have made them larger units and lower ceilings.
Yeah, but that's not the goal of the
No,
program.
That's right, okay.
So
I guess we'll have to ask for a continuance.
Okay?
If
So
we
to
come
the
back-
next
Can we come in 2
available
weeks?
meeting, is the next meeting open? 2 weeks?
Shouldn't be a very long meeting, since most of you have heard everything that we have to say.
We can find space.
All right.
You
2 week
do have space?
continuance.
Yeah.
Thanks
Okay.
for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're continuing.
Sorry, Danny.
Give you
Oh,
my agenda. Oh, here, I got it. I got what it is.
Pretty mean-spirited, I have to say.
Item number 4, 1298 Coast Village Road. We're now an hour and a half behind, roughly. This is a revised project description. Project has been revised as follows. The height of the three-story project is proposed to be raised 8 7/8 inches, revised down from the 12 7/8 inch increase previously proposed on June 19th. A new tower has been added to vary the height of the building. A jacuzzi is proposed on the second floor patio near the northwest corner of the project. The entire proposal consists of the demolition of the existing gas station and service bays and the construction of a new three-story mixed-use building on an 18,196 square foot lot. The 18,595 square foot building would include 4,800 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor and 13,795 square feet of residential space on the second and third floors. Then we have the bedroom mix, which I don't think I need to reread, 36 parking spaces, and a bunch of grading, 11,000 cubic yards. So this is a review after final for increased height and new tower element. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. And we last looked at this on June 19th. Welcome back. Your name, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Gorell with the LMA Architects. And yes, we're back. We are looking to compromise from where we were at last time. I think we were talking about 13 inches, and now we're proposing a 9 inches increase. And we would prefer to have the 13, but we could make that work. And I think that was a suggestion of at least one of the board members. So we thought we'd give that a shot and see if that works for you. And then here's the site plan. Second floor level. These are the 3 units, as you recall. North facing here, Coast Village Road and Olive Mill. And just as a reminder, I think from the face of curb, some of our third floor elements are plus 40 feet setback. Roof plan. This is where we've added the roof element, a little tower element to modulate the roof height. Let me see if I can go back. Oops. Third level. Second level, and this is where we added a jacuzzi for this unit number 3. And the north of here is the garage. And as you might recall, there's a tremendous thick hedge of ficus along here. And then this is parking for the Long's drugstore that's next door. Elevations. So where we end up with is on the north side, we're a little over 35 feet in height. And then we've changed the different floor elevation. I think the suggestion was try to see if you can take some inches out of each floor, which we took a couple of inches out of each floor. And we might end up with, as the previous speaker was talking about sound systems, we're going to have trying to have a very nice soundproofing system, not proofing, but sound reduction system between floors. So we may end up with 9.6, 9.8
clear
ceiling heights. Yeah, let's see how it works out with the sound systems. So there's the numbers. You've seen this before. Those are the 3 items that we would look forward to your comments on, sections and so forth. And I mean, what our hope would be that we've made a compromise here, and that as far as the general application of the guidelines that the ABR looks to achieve, that we're falling within that sphere, and we would look forward, hopefully, to positive comments and avoid having to take it beyond this board. And
let me ask you.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask a question?
That's good enough. I've completed my presentation, sir.
We should go and open up public comment if that's completed, and then we can go to questions. Is there anyone here that'd like to comment on this project? Seeing none, we'll go to letters that were written. This is from Todd Bower. Dear advisory group members, we're board members, but it's okay. I grew up at 121 Olive Mill Road, just 2 lots above 1298, although I have lived within the city of Santa Barbara for many years, and family still owns property on Olive Mill. My request is you oppose this and any and all attempts by the applicant to wrest additional height concessions from the board. There were hearings several years ago during which neighborhood compatibility was reviewed extensively and many public comments were received. As a result of much deliberation, the height of the project was explicitly capped. I oppose these efforts to incrementally or otherwise dismantle what were long ago established as height, bulk, scale parameters for this project that were determined as a result of careful planning that included much community input. Deny the proposed revisions. Do not dishonor the energy expended and contributions offered by so many neighbors who registered their input to render the project as currently approved. And then from Kevin Hooling, looks like. To whom it may concern in regard to the new building at 1298 Coast Village Road, as a neighbor, I would like to say I oppose any more heightening of the building. It's tall enough already. Another one from Kathleen, someone, also opposed to additional height. Another one from Doris Coons, also opposed to additional height, any change to the height. And then Pamela Bower. Property owners and tenants in our Olive Mill Road neighborhood have been fighting this project since the story poles appeared because of height, bulk, and scale. Please do not allow any additional height. Okay, so we'll close public comment. We'll go to questions from the board. Howard.
So, Jeff, please take me back to a little bit in the process. You proposed a project at one time that was approved by this board.
That's correct.
And then what happened?
Well, from when we started the project and the board had approved it, the seismic codes have changed in California. They've increased some 40%. What that has done is increase the depth of beam sizes and so forth. So we need, well, the project before us, they were talking about utilizing spaces above bathrooms, down hallways, and so forth. We've done that for our HVAC systems as best we can, but because of these beam height increases, we need, and there's areas within the building that we really need some additional room to get ducting routed around to make it easier. It's a code thing. It has changed.
That increased the building by how much?
Well, what we're asking...
13 inches, right?
That's what we were asking for. That's right.
So you came here and asking this board to approve a height increase of 13 inches, and I believe this board denied you.
That's correct.
You appealed. You went to the planning commission.
We haven't done that. We're back.
Oh, we're back.
We're back, and what we're looking for is to say, okay, there was some comments that, hey, can you take some space out of this? As you know, we tried to do that from the inside, worked very hard at that. That was not possible.
You and I looked at these plans and tried to figure out how to
spend an hour and a half doing that. That's
volume
correct.
ceilings on the second floor.
Yeah.
Third floor.
The commercial floor level had lowered previously from 14-something to 12-something. So we've done all of that. We asked for 13 inches. We've decided, let's come back. Let's try one more time and look at that compromise of taking some ceiling height out and see how that goes. It's 9 inches and seems very reasonable. And perhaps that's okay with the ABR. The ABR has stated that they're very comfortable with the aesthetics of the building. And so that's what we're here for.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my questions.
Okay, David, questions?
Why was the tower proposed to be added?
Well, we're looking for your comments on that, but we added that in. There were some comments that I got about the little articulation of the roof, and so that's set back some. And if you get back at a distance, it does that.
It does what?
Well, it modulates the Here it is where you see it in this case. Now that's, I think that's like 35 foot back, something like that. But it just gives a little bit of relief from a distance, and that's up to you guys what you think about that.
Okay. And then, from what I remember when you first presented the project, you had asked for this plate height increase at the third level because of you guys were trying to get more value to those third level units, aesthetically speaking. I don't remember any code issues coming up.
No, we brought that up. We brought up the HVAC, and we brought up the livability of the units, and what you're referring to seems to have been what stuck.
Okay. And lastly, if you don't mind going to A2.4. So the area at the back of where you're proposing this this hot tub, what's the structures on the adjacent property behind there?
This is their garage here, and there's a very high. I've got some pictures if you'd like.
Mind
of
putting
this.
those out so
Sure,
that we can see on the screen?
So this is that back corner here, and this is the ficus hedge. Now that's all been trimmed back per our arborist, so they'll grow back. This is where they were, and this is what they'll tend to grow back to. They'll keep them more manicured than this, but that's what you have in this back corner is the garage. You have the hedges, and then you have, I don't know if you can see it from here, probably can. It's a parking lot on this side.
What buffers this property from the parking lot?
From this parking lot?
Yeah, what's along here?
This is, we're looking to possibly, and we're talking about that now, landscaping, maybe might do it with some bamboo or something like that will stay fairly tight and screen for both from the parking lot view. But these folks, again, aren't going to want to be looking down into the parking lot next door.
You couldn't turn the corner with the ficus, right?
I don't think we've got the room to do that.
Yeah, so my other question is, the ficus, are they on your property or
Yes.
the applicant's property?
Our property.
Okay. No further questions for me. Thank you.
Okay. Amy?
So, let's see, as far as the jacuzzi, because it's the jacuzzi, the tower, and the 8 7/8 inches.
9 inches.
Right. So is the jacuzzi visible from like where it's tucked back?
It's tucked back in this corner, and as I say, it's not visible from the neighbor.
Okay.
And I don't think it would be visible really from the parking lot even.
Right up against the edge of the building, can you see down from the?
Well, okay, this is an outdoor patio here, and then there's a single-story roof that this kind of branches out onto. So you'd be looking down.
Was the patio always a patio?
Always
You
a patio.
just added the jacuzzi.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a parapet wall, right?
Or was.
It would
It
go
used to
around.
go
Yeah,
straight.
and now it goes
to
this
go
way.
straight.
So it's
It
about
used to go
42
straight.
inches high.
But it used to go straight, okay.
Yeah, be like a guardrail.
Okay, and then the tower in the front?
You want to see the elevation?
And
That would
we
be-
didn't ask for a tower or any modulation in the roof.
You did
Because
not.
I'm reading, okay.
You did
Because
not.
that's what I thought you said,
Yeah,
but
no.
we didn't ask for that.
No.
Okay, so that's right there, and you added that because,
Well, we had some folks that were talking about how nice that would be to get a little articulation, so we thought, well, let's take a look at that, which we've done. And again, like I say,
Done,
yeah,
yeah,
so it's up to you guys.
okay. And then, as far as the height, because this has come up in more than one meeting here where we've moved to deny the increase. In the last one, it said it was inconsistent with the direction from City Council. So if staff could comment on that. Is that what, because I remember having this conversation a long time ago.
Right. This project went to council on appeal, and council sent the project back saying it should be reduced 1.5 feet on the northern property line.
Which is where we are currently, which is what was approved.
Correct.
Foot and a half,
Well, yeah.
18 inches.
So what it is now is what city council basically had asked for. Well,
This is what city
without the 9-inch
Oh, I see.
increase.
So without the
But-
9-inch increase,
okay,
city
those are all
council
my-
is
those
okay
are all
with
my
that.
questions.
Yeah.
And so
We were permitted
and they're basically
with this set.
They sent you back to us saying, if you can get ABR to give you the 9 inches, then
No.
we'll okay. then.
No,
They-
no, no.
they-
That's not
they-
what,
they
that's
didn't-
not what I said. They're,
No, that's what I said.
Oh.
No, they haven't been back to
Haven't been
council
back to
since
city
that
council.
point,
Okay, so.
a number of years ago.
no, what I was,
Jeez, what a mess.
Is missing.
those are all mine.
Okay, thanks.
So they have not been back to city council?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have any questions, so we're into comments. David?
I don't support the tower. I understand the articulation comments, but I don't, at least for myself, I wasn't something I was looking for, so I don't think that's a necessary component to add into the project at this point. I also think the overall height for what's needed for code considerations and aesthetics, I don't support the increase of height either. The spa, I'm fine with. I think it's not in a very visible location. You have a ton of landscaping back there projecting from the adjacent property. If you were going to do the spa, I would personally want to see maybe some more planting on that west property line to buffer from the parking lot, which would, like you'd mentioned, would be nicer for the inhabitants too. So I support that aspect of the proposal, but not the overall height increase for the tower.
Okay. Amy?
I'm in agreement with David on the tower and the height, because we've kind of gone through this conversation before, I feel, and I think that what came from city council should still stand. As far as the spa, I'm okay with adding the spa. I just feel like it should just be pulled back towards the deck because it's protruding out and kind of overlooking this adjacent, getting closer to the adjacent property. But I can support the spa being in that location, being at the kind of in that back corner of the property.
What pulled back?
This is a garage.
Yeah.
I think.
That'll ultimately be what it would be looking at.
Oh, with
Yeah, that's the back corner.
this
This is right along here.
on this side.
Yep.
What's the
I can support the spa
upper levels?
with
Okay.
the
The upper levels.
landscaping.
On the second level, or
Where the spa is.
But doesn't your driveway come down here?
it goes underneath?
But is it, so the retaining for it, it's not at the property line?
No, yeah. We're magicians. We got it all worked out.
But I'm saying, how are those hedges going to remain? That's the question.
Yes.
They're remaining. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Trim back, but remaining.
Well, yeah. While we were under construction, the arborist recommended we trim them back, and that's what I'm showing is what they were.
Okay.
And they'll come back to that, but be more manicured.
So, yeah.
But it's up a level.
I'll support the spa.
All right.
As proposed.
Howard, comments?
I support the spa in the tower. And my comment about the height increase requested. I feel a little differently than my colleagues here. And the reason is that this building is a very different building from the previous building. This building is a 1 and 2 and 3-story building, all modulated, all stepping back from the street as it goes up and along the street, and including the corner. So I feel that the 9-inch increase, and I say this because you and I have spent some time trying to work within the height constraints previously, and it is not possible without reconfiguring the upper level floors. So I'm going to, and I was in agreement with a 13-inch height increase before for the reason that I spent the time, and I saw no other way. So now that it's 9 inches, I'm going to okay that. That's where I am. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, I was around when this project first went through review. I was on the AVR, and I know it was extremely controversial, especially opposed by the neighbors next door. So I'm not only, and I feel like we should stick with the plan the way it is, the way it was approved, and not add a jacuzzi on the second floor deck adjacent to the neighbors, intruding onto the former roof space. I'm not in favor of any of it. But someone needs to make a motion.
Amy, why don't you make the motion? I just want to hear what your thought is.
I guess my motion would be, where are we? Basically, final approval.
Review after final.
Review after final. Approving the, well, actually, so we're not technically approving the spa location?
Yes, so there's three aspects of it.
Okay, I'm just,
So the
because it
three-
only says the height and the tower element on the, okay.
Yeah.
So the motion would be for review after final for the proposed spa on the second floor deck, but not for the increased height or the new tower element.
I'll second that.
And the reasoning, just to carry that forward, is because it would
reason-
be inconsistent, the height would be inconsistent with the council?
Correct. The reason for not approving the increased height would be based on city council direction. And I also believe for the new tower element also kind of adds to the roof height. And so that's where that's coming from. So that would be the motion, and David seconded.
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Two opposed.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very
Well,
much.
no, it doesn't.
I'm opposed because I don't
Doesn't
think
it? Someone else has
jacuzzi should
to.
be approved. So,
Well,
And-
why don't you make the motion?
well, I would say that the height increases and height increases are not acceptable because they increase building height that was capped by the city council. And the jacuzzi location, I feel, is not acceptable because it extends the second floor deck area closer to the neighbor and creates a frequented outdoor space that would also potentially impacts the neighbor.
Neighbors.
Chairman Greedy, can I add something under
So
discussion?
the motion would be to, if the applicant wishes to pursue the jacuzzi, to pull it back away from the neighbor.
2.4.
From the property line on the, is this considered west or east or north?
North.
Must be the
West.
north.
Huh, north?
North.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about, Kirk, right now, to the jacuzzi itself, to the edge of the jacuzzi is about 15 and a half feet back.
Project was approved with a roof element there, and you're pushing the patio further out into the roof element, and it's potentially impactful to the neighbor on the north. So that's my issue.
Could I ask for clarification, Chairman Greedy?
Sure.
So you were saying as long as it was contained within the existing patio line, you would support the
Yes.
jacuzzi there? I
Yes.
would support that.
Also, the
Yeah.
setback. I don't think you're allowed to have jacuzzis inside the setback. This is the setback right there. This line right here.
I mean, I'll second your.
Okay.
I'll second that
Okay,
motion.
then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we clarify, it's the
motion is no height increases, but the jacuzzi is acceptable if it's pulled back, if it's located in a way that does not, I don't know how, let's go
Project.
to that. Project further towards the property to the north, the property line to the north.
clarify that's a denial of the height increase and tower element?
Yes,
Okay.
based on the city council direction. And we had a 3-1 vote.
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, thank you. I think this is the old one.
Sorry, Kirk, I couldn't support you. I agree with 2 out of 3, but I think the height element is a
Excuse me.
hardship.
All right, the last item, no, it's not. Item number 5, 706 East Haley Street.
That was the older one.
Applicant does not appear to be here. There they are. This is a new item, proposal for a new commercial office space. Project consists of a new one-story, 563 square foot commercial building on a 10,429 square foot lot, currently developed with a mixed-use building containing 2,097 square feet of residential and 1,409 square feet of commercial space. This is,
One.
yes, we're going to take a 5-minute break until the applicant arrives.
Then you say you got other plans. Oh, girl, you're moving in the wrong direction. Moving in the wrong direction. Yeah. Lady, you're moving in the wrong direction. So far away from me. I wish my mama was here. A strong, strong, steady rose. She would know what to do, what to say, how to pray to make things better. What does it mean when you say you want to be free? Free to sing, free to dance, free to let someone take a glance in a world that's free of me. You're moving in the wrong direction, moving in the wrong direction. You're moving in the wrong direction, so far away from me. Well, you're moving, well, you're moving, well, you're moving, well, you're moving away, so far away, so far away from me, oh. Well, you're moving, 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 oh, so far away from me.
Out of the tree of life, I just picked me a plum. You came along and everything started to hum. Still, it's a real good bet, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine? You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine. Wait till the warm-up's underway. Wait till our lips have met. Wait till you've seen that sunshine day. You ain't seen nothing yet. The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine? The best is yet to come, come the day you're mine. Come the day you're mine. I'm gonna teach you to fly. We've only tasted the wine. We're gonna drain the cup dry. Wait till your charms are ripe for these arms to surround. You think you've flown before, but you ain't left the ground. Wait till you're locked in my embrace. Wait till I draw you near. Wait till you see that sunshine blaze. Ain't nothing like it here. The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be
Oh, yeah, 5 didn't show up.
fine?
6 showed up.
The best is yet to come, come the day you're mine.
Reopening the meeting.
This is your pointer.
I don't need it.
You don't think so?
No, not for me. I mean, the applicant might need it, but I don't need it. So we're reopening the meeting for August 14th. We're on item number 6, 11 Anacapa Street. You've seen this project now 3 or 4 times. It's a proposal for a new restaurant in the coastal zone. Includes the conversion of existing fabrication shop for a new 2,500 square foot restaurant and bar use. The remodel will be done to the front facade of this multi-tenant building, and a new 1,834 square foot dining patio will be built, and the parking lot is to be reconfigured. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided, and we last saw it on July 3rd. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
My name is Henry Lenny, Henry Lenny Design Studio.
Matthew?
You can do an introduction, sorry, I jumped the gun on that one. But I just wanted to let you know that the board will be required to make a finding that, or required to waive the required landscaping for the parking area, because it currently, as it's proposed, does not meet the standards outlined in Santa Barbara Municipal Code 2890.
Can you say it one more time?
So the board has the power to waive landscaping requirements as they are outlined in the municipal code.
Okay.
And in this case, you would need to do that in order for the proposal as it's presented to go forward.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, Ed De Vicente, DMHA.
I'm Nicole
Ed
Horn.
Nicole, yes.
From CGMLA.
Well, let me first begin by telling you that we responded to your comments.
That's positive.
Yeah, that's one thing out of the way. We've reduced the size. We went back to glass blocks, and we have three units of the blocks, which reduced it significantly. I think significantly is 8 times 3. I can't multiply anymore. 24 inches by 8 inches. So that was one of the things that we did. The other thing, we addressed the issue of the transformer. We reconfigured the trash enclosure, and Nicole's going to present the landscaping for that, essentially. So maybe we should start with the landscaping, if you
Good.
if you wish.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I have to do some. Is our sheets are in here, right?
Okay, good.
I don't know.
Would be,
Oh, no. Are they in this set?
Matthew, did I get comments from last week?
This is all M,
Thanks.
S, A,
Oh, I see it. I got it.
get it? AS, CML, there you are.
So I'm going to read the comments. There's only 5 of them. Study decreasing the proportions of the red glass lights. Just mentioned that. Study extending the wall and planter around the trash enclosure and providing additional landscaping or possible relocation of the trash enclosure. Number 3, study additional screening for the transformer. Number 4, provide clarification of the planting height requirements around the transformer. Number 5, increase the height of the wall in the front of the transformer.
So I want to start here just real quick. This is the existing site plan and the existing trees. So we're proposing to keep all of the trees, and you can see that there are actually quite a lot in the existing planters, especially this one and sort of this one. And one of the main goals, as I understand it, for this project is to kind of go lightly, tread lightly, and not do a significant amount of, improvements to the parking lot. So when you see the landscape plan, we're mostly filling in the existing planters and then adding screening with the utilities, like was mentioned earlier.
This is proposed?
This is existing.
Pre-removal.
Existing. And we're not removing any trees. And this is proposed. So I think the areas of concern seem to be the trash enclosure here and then the transformer here. And we have a couple of photos too. Maybe you could bring out that one photo of the existing area where the transformer would go. So let's pull that back a little bit. This is the street view here. This is the tree that's in the street right here. And then this palm is located right here. And then the wall is this hatch pattern here that represents this existing wall here. Yeah, existing building back here that's shown right here. So the transformer would go tucked into this little corner. We would maintain both of these existing trees, so it would be pretty screened already from the street, from this direction, and then we have a series of clearance requirements from SCE, and so that's what's indicated here with 36, 8 feet, and 36. So on either side of this planter, which is the existing configuration, we would be adding sort of 4 to 6 foot high shrubs, which are indicated here, and that's Westringia. Sorry. Which is, this one here, Westringia. And kind of stepping back, the overall landscape concept is to provide a really minimally maintained landscape plan so that it can be hand watered, it can tolerate the coastal seaside winds, it can tolerate sun and shade because this area will get a lot of shade. There's a lot of existing shade already with the existing trees. So I think if you have questions about this requirement for the clearances and what can be planted in there, I can get into further detail with you on that. But mostly all of the plants have been selected to survive a drought condition, to survive with hand watering, and to survive in a seaside condition.
Okay.
And then I'll just show you the trash. So this is the trash area, and along this wall here, we're proposing 3 vines, which is this, sorry, Howard, this plant here, to grow up along the wall, and then in front of it, Chondropetalum, which is here, which is about 3 to 4 feet high. And then this is an existing palm tree. So we're trying to fill in that existing planter.
Okay. So is that all that we're looking at today? Is the screening and the...
Yeah, I can walk you through the rest of the planting, but those seem to be what were in the comments largely.
Okay. And any other changes on the landscape from last time?
Well, I wasn't here last time. We didn't have CJ O'Malley on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't at all? We haven't reviewed the landscape at all?
No,
this is our first time?
This is the first
okay.
landscape.
Okay. I wasn't here the last time, so.
Okay, then I can walk you through it a little bit.
Yeah.
Almost all of the planters are existing, except these 2 would be enlarged because we're reconfiguring the parking layout. We're adding more spaces and they're more regular. We have some extra room now, so we're going to keep these existing palms in the corner, remove the existing shrubs that are here, and then add in some more of these drought-tolerant species, such as the Dracaena and some of these aloes, and more of the Chondropetalum, which are here. And then these are all existing planters. These are existing trees to remain, and just we would be adding mulch below them. These are existing Phoenix canariensis, and they're pretty massive. They fill up almost the entire planter. Same with this one. This is an existing yucca, and it fills up almost the entire planter. And so we're just adding a few smaller shrub species. I think these are actually agaves here. And then this planter has existing trees. You can see it's totally shaded out. These are 3 existing eucalyptus, and I think you can see them here in this photo. And then the 1 palm tree and that existing wall here. And for this one too, we're just proposing to add mulch and then no planting. This planter over here is brand new, and this is off of this new reconfigured terrace. And so in this planter, we're proposing 5 Dracaena, which are dragon trees that look similar to this. And these would be planted in gravel. And again, we're going for this very minimal maintenance. We're not going to be able to add irrigation to these areas without tearing up the entire parking lot. So the idea is that they would all be hand watered. And I have irrigation notes on the plan for the amount of time that they should be hand watered and then how frequently after that. And with all of the commercial projects in Santa Barbara, of course, we're required to use 100% low water use plants. So they all are.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Ed, you want to talk about a little bit about the parking areas and so on?
Well, let me back up a little bit. Chair and fellow board members, we've essentially filled out the package. I've been working with all the different departments to make sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. What you have in front of you is a final package with all the details. One of the comments asked for door and window details. We have those. We can go through it. But all the other architectural comments as well. A couple other exhibits I want to point to, which is important just to understand is the context of the landscaping approach and all the other kind of design components. This is the existing hydrology of the site. There's a lot of asphalt. 1976, I believe this lot was done. The 22 spaces are conditioned to the Cabrillo properties, which are also under review at HLC currently. Actually, they've received final. They'll be heading to consent to wrap things up. And so the rest of the parking lot, which is shared, is for this building. So there's some discussion previously about the corner location. That has its own parking spaces, and it takes care of itself. So there was some confusion from a previous hearing. So not at all part of this parking lot. However, this parking lot, it does, on this lot, it meets the requirements for the adjacent neighbor as well. So that's just more of a note for the project. And we've been through planning, project planners and senior planners, and they've signed off on the parking statistics you see on the plan before you. On the reconfiguration, we've had a civil engineer, also new to the team, to help work with us to confirm the stormwater requirements. It's a very challenging site because we're trying to make the most with the minimal impact. Again, with the minimal restriping and adjustments to a couple of the planter areas, on a relocation of our handicap space with all permeable paving, we're able to stay under the Tier 3 requirement. So all of those numbers are calculated here, and so we can dive in as deep as you want, but we've got all these exhibits. They've been presented both to planning and to Creeks.
Okay.
Additionally, we can go to the elevations. Help me turn to there, A203.
Oh, that's reflected ceiling plan. Okay, this
just starts with demolition.
It starts with
We
a
can go past
demolition, yeah.
So while we turn to that, one of the other things we've been working really closely with planning and building. We have a tenant who's taken a quarter of the building. And so the challenge has been we're essentially threading a needle between parking, stormwater, to make improvements to facilitate their change of use into the space without triggering so many barriers where it just becomes infeasible. So that's why we've taken great care and gone to all of the other relevant departments prior to building permit submittals, so we can make sure our I's are dotted and T's crossed. We also have a letter, which I forgot to mention when we looked at the site. We slightly adjust the trash configuration, and we can take a look at that. But it really gave a little bit more exposure to landscape against. That was another comment that had come up previously, and we can come back to that if you want. So really what you have is a final presentation package, and we can go through the door and window details and any other detailing we want. But you can see I'm just going to give you kind of the layout of our sheet. So on the main elevations here on the east and on the next sheet on the north, we have our proposed technical drawing next to the architectural rendering by Henry. So you can see the work that we've done to make sure they're coordinated, because ultimately this is what's fully detailed and makes it into the built environment. So, Henry, if there's anything to highlight of changes here, otherwise I think
There
it's
were just
consistent.
a couple of
There's 5 comments. Maybe you guys could go through each of the, because I feel like we've seen this.
Okay.
Well, I did read them out, and they really had to do with the transformer and the landscaping and the glass, so.
Well, the only thing I was going to mention is the changes that we made since the last time.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, this column was 18 inches and now it's 24 inches because it helps us engage everything that is being connected to that. We had a roll-up garage door. Now it's a big window that slides up in front of, in back of this window. And the same goes for this. It was going to be much easier to deal with. And if you want to see a similar sample, it's Baxi's Pizza. We did exactly the same thing there.
This is the same elevation, right?
Pardon me?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. And so those really were the only two changes.
And the steel and the colors,
It's all
did we look at a color
Cortez.
board last time?
Yes.
Okay, and that was approved? Just checking,
Yes.
just checking.
This is Corten here?
That's not going to be Cortez because they don't make it, but we're going to let it rust.
Oh, I see. That's fine.
Everything else, all the doors and windows are
And
Cortez.
so the details, if we didn't see the details last time,
You
we should
can
look at
see.
those pages.
All right.
Chair, before we proceed, I think informally we had the materials called out, but we do have a formal materials board package.
Oh.
So this is now here and consolidated. So again, we've been dotting i's and crossing t's after the last hearing to make sure it's all cohesive.
We have the sections.
So is all the metal doors are Corten?
Yes.
The window is
Yes,
the same?
Corten.
All the window?
Mhm.
Nice, okay.
In the end, it's actually cheaper because that way you wouldn't have to galvanize or marine paint your steel. So it makes sense. But we have, we just jump right into the doors and window details.
start
Right?
here, so-
Oh, okay.
and I'll go on.
All right. Well, there it is. Well, if you have, you can review them, but if you have any questions, but we're basically having a series of Corten's structural materials that get engaged to the various parts of the building. Let me just jump. And these are all the various conditions that we have. The sliding glass doors, the big, large windows, the beam underneath, but I think it's clear if you look at the fabricator's shop drawing.
I'm sorry, go back, can we look at that page again? Is this is the outside?
Head, yeah.
But outside?
In.
Okay. So, Yeah, this is recessed and this is not. This is a different condition, obviously.
Yes, what happens is our front door on Acapa Street is double framed, and we put the windows on the structural wall, which is the inside wall, and that's why you have a large inset on all the windows. As you turn the corner in the alley, it's only a 6-inch wall.
Okay.
And that's the reason there's a
But it looks like a double framed.
Is this that section? I'm not sure.
These are all on Anacapa.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Right, it's the entry door is a little different, Henry, because they want it to swing at 180 degrees. That's why it's pushed flush to the front.
Oh, that's right.
So this door is pushed front to the front?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, these are the shop drawings for the windows themselves. More windows, the doors. These are all the conditions which are actually noted on the plan with all the sections and so on. This is the column, and as mentioned previously, it went from 18 inches to 24 inches because it just helps us and gives us more area to receive everything that's going on here. Yeah, that was 24.
Thank you.
So wall sections here.
Nice details.
Thanks to them, not me.
Yeah. Okay.
And then this is the model, how it's going to look like.
Did we see details through the canopy?
I don't think we have those details yet. We may have to come back on the consent calendar, but essentially they are the steel members. On top, there is that, remember that corrugated glass? And on the underside of this canopies, we're going to use the LED lighting. And you know, as far as the LED lighting, we don't know. They're pretty strong, you know, they're pretty high intensity, so we may skip every other strut because we don't need it really bright. The idea is just to create a glow.
These two slide up behind, and this is 4 by 2. This is
Smaller
oh, it's a smaller
window.
So there are not as many breakups there. I see.
Yeah.
And this is same, and this is same.
Yes, exactly.
Very cool. Nice job. All right. We'll open public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, we'll go to questions. David.
Are you guys proposing any little alterations to that front wall that's in the very front of the property?
On Anacapa?
Nope.
I noticed there's like it almost looked like there was like a little sautillo banding. I don't know if that fit with your design scheme or if you guys wanted to. Yeah.
We're limited for memory's sake. The
Okay.
building in front is so
The
bad.
historical
that
aspect of it?
That's the remnants.
Okay. A point of clarification on A203 and then on your material boards, it's calling out the 8x8 glass block, but then the detail on detail 5 on A72 is 4x8 and they're stacked. So is it? Can you guys clarify if it's on the elevations on A203? It's calling out 8x8 glass block and then the material board as well down there.
Oh, it's 8
But the detail that on detail 70 number 5 on A702. It's calling out 4x8. They're still stacked, but that 24-inch module you guys want, but the width is different.
I can address that, sure. I had a question to my staff as well earlier today. I think it was 7, oh, here it is here. So it should read 4 inches thick by 8 by 8.
Gotcha.
So the thickness is actually, the 4 inches is actually the thickness.
The 8-inch module, and it's a stacking 3 high.
Correct.
Okay. And just simple, similar detail conditions as it wraps around in terms of that
It's the
recess?
same, correct.
Okay.
The outside?
Very subtle.
You may wa-
No, this is the outside, and they're recessed.
You may want to study that way in which the glass, which has weight and needs to be mechanically attached, and you have the stucco running underneath. I wouldn't do that.
Don't they have rebar? They come with their
Yeah,
own
yeah.
module,
Okay,
don't
so
they?
next question.
Yeah.
You started to speak on a little bit why the conditions of the glazing units are varied. Some of them are set a little bit deeper than others, and when that one condition is flushed out. Can you walk through maybe why that's happening again? I was trying to follow those details and see where it's going with that.
Doors, they want the door to swing 180.
On the
and it needs
patio?
It needs to exit out.
Okay.
I
No worries.
believe all the other windows, were they recessed the same?
Oh, the windows, so that was the exception.
And the glass block, will that be a different depth module than the other glazing units? And they'll all be consistent, except that one condition that's flipping out. Okay. And then I couldn't remember exactly where it is, but the canopy connection detail, it's referring to the forge drawings, but they're not really clarifying what's happening there. Can you guys clarify how that structural canopy is actually coming back and meeting against that steel beam?
Yeah.
There's one, but there's another.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find that again.
Well, we placed a Cortans beam. And the purpose of this beam is to have all of the perpendicular members of the canopy die into and they get welded. Then the glass fits on top, and then there is a gutter that receives the water because we are sloping it towards the building instead of the other way around. But the actual connections that we have for the vertical components, which are spaced out, I think is 2 feet on center.
They are, we have them in the structural drawings now.
Okay.
We wanted, it's just a weld connecting to the two.
Simple, okay. Because that condition's going to be a little bit different. I'm asking the question because if you flip to the next sheet on A603 and look at detail 5, I'm sorry, 6. There's 603. This connection condition here, it's a different system, but it looks like it's going to be set up a little bit differently than what you guys are explaining right now because it's going to stop and kiss up against that plastic. Right.
That is correct. There's
Okay.
2 different canopies. You could see them in the 3D elevate renderings. They're quite different in the design. We're waiting for the shop drawings to fine tune the detailing of this connection here. We have the structural. The previous detail is more resolved because we have the structural. That's the engineers dealt with that. The fabricator is dealing with this awning, so that's a fine tuning thing we're still working through.
And do you see that potentially it trying to match up with that other condition with the exposed steel weld, or do you guys just want to treat this like as a totally different animal?
That's a good question. Have you thought through that?
Well, we had to remove the structure and put a steel frame for this. And so what's going to happen is that the entry canopy, it's all going to have one beam that is engaged in the wall or the
column.
It's the column. Everything is going to get welded to that, but we have a large cantilever. So in effect, we have structurally sandwiched in that beam to make sure that we have enough rigidity to handle the cantilever, and that's what we are.
The rotation.
I just am talking more about like this connection aspect. This little guy, is it going to, you're going to try to pull it off and expose it the same way, or do you see it just being a different element that it doesn't matter if, the plaster kind of interrupts that connection aspect?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, we probably won't be able to answer that question until we get the shop drawings from the fabricator.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Amy.
I only have one question. What is this up top?
That is a Cortans mechanical screen.
Let's turn to that.
How far back? Just you can show it on the plan.
Let's start. Okay, we have a fairly flat roof, basically, it's a fairly flat roof building. So we're adding mechanical equipment up there for a new restaurant. So there's actually quite a bit we need to screen. So let me show you all of that coming out and our strategy to do that as well. Start here at the roof plan. Borrow the pointer.
So you're back here.
Yeah, so here's our entry canopy and the bar corner canopy and our new parapet here. And tucked further back, because the kitchen is in this portion, the rear corner, we have our screen wall that we're showing here. And we can turn, if you want to see the detail, to 20A701.
So corrugated.
It's a corrugated Cortans material.
Says galvanized.
Yeah, it's a galvanized. But it's a horizontal. The corrugation we're running it horizontally.
Maybe that is cool. That is galvanized.
It's a tube steel structure, and we're working with structural to block accordingly on the roof side. It won't go all the way down. We're going to hold it off the roof surface, but it goes up above the deck 4 foot 8 inches. And our largest piece of equipment, I think right now with roof curbs, is at about just under 4 feet tall. But we want to ensure with the additional height that any final pieces of equipment that might come through over the next month will be properly screened.
Okay. That was my only question.
Okay. Howard, questions?
Let me just see. Actually, I don't have any questions. I just have one comment.
Okay.
What page do you want?
I want the detail of the flush door that opens all the way. I have a
Should we
thought
save
on
it for
that.
comment? Or
You could save that for comments.
Okay.
Or actually, I could make it into a question if you want.
Okay, sure. Whatever works.
I need that detail where the door,
yeah.
there it is, right
That's
there. So, no, that's not it.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
flush.
it.
That's the
That's
flush
flush
door.
door.
This is the flush door.
Yeah.
So, I guess to make this a question, why would you not move the system in and have a hinge that throws the door out? You can do that, and so that it like is an offset arm, 3 or 4 inches, so that you get this plane to look like your other windows, and then you have this nice big throw. There's a hook in the hinge. It's a standard piece of steel hardware, steel hinge hardware, and you weld it on, and it's really cool.
I mean, I don't know, I have a great answer
Just-
for it. It's feasible. We've used them before. They get big and clunky because they hang out of the elevation, and these are really heavy doors too. So, being that it's an exit door, we're trying to keep it
So exit, you mean
minimal.
like you touch it and it opens, or it's electronically accessible?
No, it's considered the main exit door for the restaurant because the front door is actually a slider, which we can't use as our code required exit. And so we're just trying to keep it. It's the offset hinges become large, and especially for a door of this size, and they'll hang out actually over and wrap around the stucco in order to function properly. So that's why we pushed it to the face to keep it minimal.
I don't know about all that. The hardware is just basically a throw, and it's just that you have the hinge, and the pivot is out from that, and it doesn't touch the stucco, and the door just swings around the pivot, and it's very cool. It's used with Panic hardware all the time.
original
So you
concept
have
on it.
Panic hardware or not for this?
For this, I'll have to look at the drawings. It's a small space. I think we are over 50, so yeah, it's going to be a panic hardware.
Can I borrow your red? Can I mark on the
It's
drawing?
in my mouth, so be careful.
Here's the thickness of the wall. Here's your frame. Here's your door. So they have like this, and this hinges here so that the door pivots
I've seen
and
those.
falls this,
Okay, can I see the
like
the
that.
left?
It's very it's very neat.
We can look at.
What it would do would be maintain architectural consistency of recessing your whole framing, glazing, door, glazing its system. Thank you.
Okay, so we're in the comments, and Howard's starting. Do you have any other comments?
That's the comment. The question now becomes a comment. Could you look into the offsetting or the, of your door system, exit door?
I was going to say that, from the first concept drawings we saw, you had a window over the top of it and a little canopy, and it was announcing that door more than it is now, and it's fine, you've simplified it. But you, at one point, I think you also had like a little tile thing going around one of the doors.
I did. And that still occurs here.
Oh, it does? There's a
Yeah,
tile?
I don't know if we have a detail, but we are bullnosing. That's the only door that we're bullnosing and putting the little.
The tile?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking, since this is different, if you really wanted to keep it at the face, maybe you also did something at the frame to make it distinct from the others. That seems to me another possibility.
We'll look at both of those possibilities.
Do you have all the lighting on the plan? Is the lighting complete? Because I noticed there were some details where some lighting was hand-drawn in. It looks like you're still working on that a little.
Chair, we're just trying to fine-tune the specifications. So, for example, the step lights. We were trying to make sure, we called out the step light, but I asked my team to handwrite in what it actually was, and this is the cut sheet for it. So, because this isn't part of the project record. So that's what we were adding in.
How about sconces? You don't have any other exterior lighting to speak of?
No, the idea was that whatever light spills out of the building inside would be enough to give it some ambience.
Okay.
In the case of the fountain, we have the water in a trough, and we have several, lack of a better word, swimming pool lights that are underwater. And on top of that, we have the red glass beads, so you'll never see the light. And the idea is that it will provide a really soft light against the fountain itself. And then we would have the LED lighting on the struts of each canopy member. And then in addition to that, I think the client wants to put one of those fire pits. So, there's really no need for wall sconces, which in a way are really useless. They're nice, but they don't do much for lighting.
Okay. And then it looked like there was some other detailing. It's like you're not 100% on the detailing. Besides the canopy, there's a few other things that you're still working on.
It's the fine-tuning with the fabricators, on the steel. We're delighted to have this level of fabrication drawing because it's a custom. So it gives you and us the confidence that the things will work. But on the canopies, they got they did such a good job on doors and windows, they weren't able to get to that. So.
Okay.
One other detail, or are there details of the fountain?
Certainly.
Where would it be at? On the sections?
701.
Oh, okay.
Is this your fabricator? Great name.
So essentially, you have it's lacking some fine detailing, but the idea is clear. We've got our masonry wall. We're covering it with Corten paneling, and we've got the water, which is going to come over the top. And then on the bottom, we've got the receiving recirculation area with the red glass that Henry mentioned and the lights underneath. And our tile, this is going flush to our deck surface.
So it's the little trough of water.
Just a little
Yes.
drop of water.
So there's still construction detailing to be done, but from a design intent, we believe it's fairly clear.
Okay. So we're into comments. Howard made his comment. Do you have any other comments?
I think this project is ready for PDA, and we just need the, oh, it already has?
Yeah, they're looking for
I
final.
see. Well, even, I think this is ready for final with plans to complete structural plans. You'll have to have them for the building department anyway, but I think this is ready for final.
Amy, comments?
Yeah, I think that the project definitely moving in the right direction. I like the landscaping and the landscaping. Actually, now that we didn't actually see the updated or the trash enclosure. I guess we saw the screen. Our comment was more about the screening. So I think the screening and around the trash, and then also the screening around the transformer. It's definitely an improvement. I like the materials, and I do think that given the detailing and the materials that you're using with the Core 10 doors and windows, I think that it would be a benefit to have this door also recessed. I think that adding some more detail to this fountain sketch section so that we understand all the materials coming together. But I think the concept is there. And I think we also should see kind of what's happening at the tops of these walls. If there's a section through that, if there's like a cap or, and then the only other
Canopy.
in canopy details. And well, I would also add, we should probably have the material for this corrugated, the galvanized metal screen above. It may want to be a different color, but it'd be good to see it all together if this is actually going to be galvanized up there, rather than how it's being
Galvanized Core 10
shown.
though, right? It's galvanized
No,
Core
it
10?
just says
No,
galvanized.
just galvanized.
corrugated.
Okay.
So I think we just need more information on that
Galvanized
material,
corrugated.
especially since it's 4'8" off the top of that flat roof. But overall, I think the concept's still there. It's just these kind of finalizing all the details. So
Well, are you opposed to the galvanized on the roof, or are you?
I guess I think it should maybe be, no, I guess if everything else has more of a Core 10, I may say maybe it should be a little darker to
Well, they do
recede.
make the corrugated in Core 10s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That
I
would
think
look
that
great.
it would kind of
That would
go
look
with
great.
the
With the
palette
theme,
of the
yeah.
project.
Thanks, Amy.
You want to see this full board again? Amy?
I would say yes, only because there seemed to be a fair amount of details. And I think it would be a benefit just for everyone to look at them.
Okay. David?
I agree with the comments of Board Member Tripp. I think there was one that. One question that, forgive me if it's already been answered, but the patio itself, this timber stack that you guys are doing, it's like 18 inches high. Do you not have to provide any guardrail above that because of the change in grade? Or is that it? Is there going to be anything else detailed above that timber to act as a guard?
No, until you hit 30 inches, the code doesn't require any kind of edge protection. Well, we do need edge protection. I should clarify. We do need edge protection for any wheelchairs rolling off.
Providing that with the change of the timber height, right? 18 inches.
Yes, that's correct. But no fall protection.
I was asking because it says 34 inches plus or minus from grade, so I didn't know if that was to the top of the timbers that you guys are going to design or if it's actual top of surface.
Timber.
Okay. Then I agree with the comments that Board Member Tripper made. It's a really nice design. You guys have, it's really evident through landscaping, through architectural design. So it's going to be a great aspect of that area that's pretty long overdue. So I think you guys have done a good job.
Okay. Well, I agree with those comments, except I think it could come back on consent. I think the level of care and attention that we're already seeing it's pretty clear that this is going to be a really nice project. And I think with some conditions, it could come back on consent. And I would say just the ones that I saw was the column lantern. Obviously, that'll be further detailed, but the way, as long as it stays true to the concept drawing that's represented, it looks fine. The canopy needs some more detailing, both the canopies. The lighting, we need a plan that shows, how the lighting's going to work out and how it's going to attach to steel members and so on. The question about the exit door, how to detail that, either redetail the jamb or look at recessing it. And then I think, there's a little bit more tidying up on some of the details. To me, this really, again, as long as it stays true to what's represented, I feel like that's an acceptable detail right there. So, and then I think Amy's comment about going to Corten corrugated for the roof canopy or the roof screening is a good suggestion. So that would be my motion, is to return to the consent calendar to address those comments for final.
Mr. Chair, one other item. There was some mention about waiving landscaping requirements so that are not in compliance with the ordinance. I'd like to know what those are, and maybe we could put those, burden those onto some future applicant to take care of so that the issue of landscaping is addressed in the long run. I don't even know what the shortfall is on these plans, so.
Well, I can speak to that, I think. For example, they don't have finger planters every 8 spaces. They don't have the perimeter planning that's typically called for new projects because they're going with the existing configuration as it is, basically. So we're
Well, I'm wondering if we restripe, say, any lot in Santa Barbara, if you were just going to restripe, would you still fall into the...
Does it re-trigger? Yeah, it triggers.
It does. It triggers us. Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
actually, I'll agree. I do agree. It could come back on consent. So
Okay.
I would second your motion.
Okay. But we can add in the comment that we are aware that we're waiving the typical landscaping requirements for the parking.
Right.
And that the screening of the, what's it called? Transformer that's been proposed is acceptable as designed. And in general, landscaping is acceptable as designed. So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for a treat.
And on a high note.
Let's see, I think that's an extra.
Do you need this?
Of course, Matt.
We done?
One more, I think.
I'm not sure if they're different.
No, they're not. No, that's it.
Joe or something?
Yeah, number 5 failed to show. So we're closing our meeting for this evening with a quote from Alvar Aalto who said, "The ultimate goal of the architect is to create a paradise. Every house, every product of the architect should be the fruit of our endeavor to create an earthly paradise for people."
Yeah, but he was Alvar Aalto.
That's right.
I'm nowhere near him.
Something to strive for.